Chapter 875. A provocation sinister killing intent radiated from Gu Li's body. Anyone who sensed it would tremble in fear. Anyone could tell that he truly intended to kill. Indeed, Gu Li really did intend to kill. He didn't need to worry about anything here. The monks of the Buddhist domain, who stood on the moral high ground, no longer had any tricks up their sleeve. The experts of the underworld, heavenly court, and immortal region were now mortals without the strength to truss a chicken. To Gu Li, this place was like a holy temple. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. The instant he saw Gu Li, Yi Zichen's calm heart stirred. The moment he sensed Gu Li's killing intent, he took a step forward. In terms of killing intent, he was no less ruthless than Gu Li. This isn't the place for you to fight. Just as the tension was about to rise, Gu Zichen spoke up from his chair. With a sullen face, he glanced at the two men who were filled with the smell of gunpowder. "Both of you behave yourselves." He laughed. When he saw Gu Zichen's dark expression, the corners of Gu Li's lips curled upwards. His chilling killing intent instantly vanished. This sudden change caught the surrounding immortals off guard. Judging from his calm demeanor, it was as if he'd never intended to kill Gu Li at all. His left eyebrow twitched. Gu Li pursed his lips and shrugged. "You still want to protect him at a time like this? That doesn't quite fit with what you told me earlier. It seems you've decided to continue down the path of irrevocable defeat?" Judging from Gu Li's tone, he'd spoken to Gu Zichen before. After a brief hesitation, Yi Zichen understood. Back in his sea of consciousness, Gu Zichen had mentioned his plan. At the time, he'd naively assumed that Gu Zichen would abandon him and choose Gu Li. But now it seemed he'd already paved the way for his second plan. Although this didn't mean much to Yi Zichen, he still felt a little strange. The other immortals were astonished as well. This guy actually knew that expert? Could it be that he'd agreed to Gu Li's actions? Also, the ancestral Buddha had brought him back to the Buddhist domain, and now he had him appear here. Were they all entrusted by someone else? The monks of the Buddhist domain all had the same expression on their faces. The group of immortals couldn't tell what was going on from their expressions. They couldn't ask that expert either. All of this could only become a mystery, buried in the bottom of everyone's hearts. You've failed countless times, yet you still insist on a path that leads to certain failure. Do you really think that Yi Zichen can be your bargaining chip here? Gu Li chuckled playfully, then continued to taunt Yi Zichen. "That's true. In the end, you guys are the whole. I have nothing more to say. I've never thought of borrowing your power. To tell you the truth, when you told me your identity, I was already rejecting you in my heart." "Are you done?" Gu Zichen raised his brows. It was impossible to read his expression. "Don't talk to me like that. Heaven chose two emperors, and I'm the one who made the emperor's star shine. In other words, my existence is your only chance of reversing the situation. You won't do anything to me." Why hadn't Gu Zichen immediately carried out his second plan? Or perhaps they hadn't chosen Gu Li's path. The main reason was that Gu Li was too arrogant. He always believed he had something up his sleeves that no one could do anything to him. Secondly, his way of thinking was indeed at odds with them. Despite this provocation, Gu Zichen's expression didn't change in the slightest. "Are you done?" Gu Li shrugged fearlessly and arched his brows. Yi Zichen's expression was filled with disgust at his provocation. However, when he looked at Gu Zichen, he was just as calm and indifferent as ever. In terms of temperament, Yi Zichen was still far inferior to him. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Sometimes, he just couldn't control his emotions and allowed them to throw him into disarray. Although Gu Zichen was a failure, he was still far stronger than Yi Zichen in certain areas. But then he thought about it. If Yi Zichen had experienced the vicissitudes of life, after experiencing great ups and downs, great joys and great sorrows, Gu Zichen would have been the same. He himself would probably be the same. This was not worthy of being revered. Guli glanced at Guzichin subtly. When he saw that Guzichin had no intention of paying any attention to him, he curled his lips in interest. The surrounding immortals were still guessing and trying to figure out what was going on. I've never said I'd stand on anyone's side, even now. Guzichin, who'd been so calm this entire time, suddenly said something inexplicable. The immortals who didn't know what he was talking about were baffled, but Guli and Yizichin knew exactly what he was trying to say. You can say whatever you want, said Guli with a playful shrug. This is your personal space, so you naturally set the rules. If you think voting is fair, then so be it. I have no objections, but… Halfway through his sentence, Guli paused and glanced meaningfully at Yizichin. We'd better hurry up with the voting and grant you the seal of the Master of the Three Realms. If we take too long, I'm afraid that by the time Brother Zichin leaves… Guli said nothing, but every now and then, he chuckled calmly. Yizichin could tell from his tone that something was off. His heart trembled and he frowned. What happens after we leave? Why should I tell you? Guli cocked his head and laughed playfully. We're competitors, after all. I don't think there's any need for me to share information with you, right? Speak. Yizichin's enraged emperor's might appeared. When he saw his furious expression, Guli's heart leapt with delight. He was delighted to see his enemy so anxious and restless. If he didn't say anything, Yizichin might ignore Guzichin's attempts to stop him and attack him. If Yizichin intervened, that would naturally be the best outcome. However, when he considered that Guzichin might personally attack, Guli wasn't confident in facing him. Emperor's fate was already in his pocket, so he wasn't in a hurry. He might as well toy with Yizichin for a while. It made him anxious, but he couldn't leave. He couldn't sit still while feeling anxious and restless. Wasn't that rather amusing? As he considered this, Guli feigned fear and said, Don't scare me. Don't scare me. I'm a very timid person. When I get nervous, I forget a lot of things. Chapter 876. For the battle of the future in front of Maple City. Reinforcements from the Three Realms had already arrived. The demons descended from the sky as well. Within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers, the sky was filled with troops from both sides, blotting out the sun. It was a grand scene. As the leader of the demons, Black Dragon stood at the very front of his troops. Behind him, the 12 demon sovereigns stood in a row. Even though the demon sovereigns had suffered losses before, that didn't mean the demons didn't have someone of equal strength. Who would have thought the people of the Beast region would become the Three Realms' dogs? Black Dragon's expression was grave. The situation was no longer the same as before. The reinforcements from the Beast region were enough to make Black Dragon take them seriously. However, he didn't blame Suiyun for wasting time. The way he saw it, Suiyun was thinking for their sake. Besides, Black Dragon felt the same way. Heh! A faint sneer echoed through the sky. The one who laughed was Su Luer, dressed in a long blue robe. The demons had mobilized all their elite. Although most of the higher-ups of the Three Realms had gone to participate in the struggle for supremacy, that didn't mean their defenses were weak. The Beast region. Although they didn't belong to any of the Three Realms, their strength couldn't be underestimated. They stepped forward. Su Luer wasn't alone in facing Black Dragon. She was accompanied by a group of higher-ups from the various clans of the Beast region. What? Did I say something wrong? This beautiful lady? Black Dragon smiled calmly. Su Luer's expression was icy, but she said nothing. At that moment, Luo Wei, the city lord of Maple City, stepped forward, clad in red armor. Demon, don't spout nonsense. He pointed his sword at Black Dragon and shouted, This isn't a place you can come to. If you retreat now, we can spare your lives. Don't make a mistake. Ha ha ha. Black Dragon couldn't help but laugh loudly. Do you think I've mobilized so many people just to play around? It seems you've forgotten how we lost earlier, scolded Luo Wei, his expression dark. Failure is a common occurrence in the military, so why mention it again? At the mention of their previous defeat, The smile on the black dragon's face disappeared, and he said, "Since you've already said that, then I'll say the same thing here. If all of you put down your weapons now, I might let you off the hook." Arrogant! Luo Wei still wanted to speak, but Su Luo raised her hand to stop him. The pupils under the light blue eyelashes were filled with a chill that made one's heart palpitate. The Yao could tell the truth with the Medusas watching them, but Su Luo, he was afraid that he had already reached that stage where he would feel as if he was going to be frozen by her gaze. What does this beautiful lady want to say? When he saw Su Luo step forward, Black Dragon raised his brows, his expression somewhat frivolous. "You really talk a lot," Black Dragon said noncommittally as he rubbed his fingernails. "It's all right. I like to chat with pretty ladies. If we can talk alone for a while, maybe I'll be happier." "Really?" Su Luo narrowed her eyes. Suddenly, 9 snow-white tails sprouted from her back. In the blink of an eye, her pupils turned from black to red, and her snow-white tails were stained with blood. "But I don't like talking too much." With that, Su Luo couldn't be bothered to waste any more words. Without any hesitation, she rose high into the air. She dragged her right hand through the air, and a thick layer of inky clouds appeared above her head. The surrounding temperature plummeted. Sensing the change, Black Dragon couldn't help but arch his brows. How unfriendly! With that, Hei Long gestured to the demon sovereigns behind him with a solemn expression. All of them stiffened. Luo Wei and the others reacted the same way. Their gazes weren't fixed on Black Dragon, but on the demon sovereigns behind him. They'd received Su Luo's transmission as soon as she'd arrived. "Leave the Black Dragon to me." Among the people present, Su Luo's strength was the highest. No one else dared to refute her. Although quite a few people had come from the Beast region, the patriarchs responsible for protecting their clans had all stayed behind. They were worried that the demons would play dirty tricks. In order to prevent that from happening, the clans needed someone to protect them. Even Su Luo had to leave Yin Shang behind in the 9-tailed fox clan before she could come. As for why they hadn't mobilized all their forces, the battlefield was theirs, so they didn't need to go all out. Even if the front lines were no match for the demons, they could still send reinforcements in time. What's more, the more people they sent out, the more casualties they'd suffer. Having more people wasn't an advantage. "It seems this beautiful lady's attainments in the ice arts are extraordinary. I'd like to experience it for myself." Bang! Black Dragon stomped his right foot in the air, causing the air beneath his feet to explode. He transformed into a beam of light and shot towards Su Luo. Pull one hair and the whole body moves. Su Luo and Black Dragon's exchange was the signal for battle. Attack! Luo Wei and the others charged towards the demon sovereigns. The demon sovereigns knew full well that they were up against these people, so they charged forward without hesitation. It wasn't just them. The soldiers standing behind them received the same signal. Kill! Their roars were deafening. The two armies collided. Clang, clang, clang. Their weapons clashed, and their killing intent soared to the heavens. The area around Maple City of the Immortal Region had become the main battlefield. Within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers, warriors from both sides were locked in a fierce struggle. They were bathed in blood, and although their bodies were riddled with scars, not a single one of them took a single step back. In this moment they were all glorious. Carrying with them what they believed to be righteous, they carried out their mission of glory. The warrior from the 3 realms chopped off the head of the demon warrior with a single slash. However, before he had the chance to catch his breath, and before anyone could cheer him on, his abdomen was pierced through by another spear-wielding demon warrior. His eyes widened as he coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. However, no one even felt sorry for his death. Similar scenes played out over and over again on the battlefield. In the face of this endless slaughter, the air of the Immortal Region had long since lost its former freshness. Their noses were filled with the thick scent of blood, and the air itself was suffused with the color of blood. No one thought of retreating. The people of the three realms wanted to protect their territory. They wanted to protect their future. The demons wanted to seize their territory, and they wanted to create a future for themselves. Neither side had any reason to retreat. No matter which side they were on, they were all bloodshot. They only had one thought in their minds: to kill every enemy in front of them. 4. Chapter 877. Chapter 877. Voting. What kind of trick are you playing now? Yi Zichen's eyes were bloodshot. He gnashed his teeth and roared. His smile, coupled with his mocking, playful smile. Before coming here, Guli had definitely done something to the outer realms. In his fury, Yi Zichen couldn't help but step forward. Guli had long since anticipated this, and an obscure light flashed through his eyes. Whether it's a trick or not, I can't say for sure. But what I can tell you is that, tch, those guys are in pretty bad shape. You! In his agitation, Yi Zichen noticed Gu Li's subtle smile. Instantly, he sobered up from his muddled rage. Gu Li was provoking him on purpose. The fury on his face gradually vanished, and he stepped back. When Gu Li saw this, he arched his brows. So you've realized. Why hadn't Gu Li taken Yi Zichen seriously before? It was mainly because Yi Zichen was easily provoked. With the slightest provocation, Yi Zichen's rage would rise to his head and he'd lose all reason. Angry people were the easiest to expose their weaknesses. However, Gu Li hadn't expected Yi Zichen to realize this. It seemed Yi Zichen wasn't as easy to deal with as he'd thought, but he was only slightly difficult, that was all. Emperor Yi, why aren't you saying anything? Could it be that you, someone who cares about the world, are going to abandon your millions of citizens? You should be praying that nothing happens to them. Yi Zichen's tone was calm, and he spoke in a completely ordinary tone. However, from his deep, pitch-black eyes, one could sense a frightening killing intent. This kind of killing intent was even more frightening than when Yi Zichen was angry. Gu Li couldn't help but arch his brows. Then, he heard Yi Zichen speak. Don't provoke me again, got it? After warning Gu Li, Yi Zichen's gaze swept past the crowd of immortals. Hurry up and start voting. Don't waste my time here. Emperor Yi, you really are tyrannical, Gu Li smiled playfully. Gu Li smiled playfully. Yi Zichen suddenly turned his head and looked at him in disdain. Since you already voted, then *ck off. This isn't a place for you. He raised his right hand, and a beam of purple light struck Gu Li. The multicolored light appeared so suddenly that Gu Li didn't even have time to dodge. After taking this attack head-on, his feet dragged on the ground as he retreated rapidly. The momentum just happened to disappear when he fell off the stairs. Bang! Gu Li fell to the ground. The surrounding immortals instinctively made way for him. Gu Li sat on the ground, his eyes flashing with sinister light. He squinted his eyes and looked up at Yi Zichen, only to see that Yi Zichen didn't even look him in the eye. Yi Zichen. He looked at Yi Zichen coldly, then retracted his gaze, revealing his pearly white teeth. Not bad. Now you deserve to be my opponent. Gu Zichen hadn't expected Yi Zichen to act like this. His lips curled into a smile, but his smile faded. There are no rules for voting. You only need to vote for the person you think is the most suitable to be the master of the three realms. The candidates can only be these people here. The voting order will be from last to first. Let's begin. Wait a moment. At that moment, one of the immortals suddenly spoke up. Most of the people here are from the heavenly court. Doesn't that mean the North Pole Emperor has the upper hand in the voting? Quite a few immortals nodded. Although the three realms were one big family, under certain circumstances, they still had to stand on opposing side. For example, right now, every immortal wanted their leader to take the throne. 40% of the people from the heavenly court had come to participate in the struggle for supremacy. This was clearly unfair to the others. You're talking to me about fairness, aren't you? The corners of Gu Zichen's lips curled up, but his smile abruptly vanished. Most of the heavenly court's immortals are here. That can only mean that their overall strength is greater than yours. That also means that their first seat's leadership and influence are greater than yours. The master of the three realms has to choose someone with enough influence to assume the role. That's why your argument about fairness isn't valid. Rather than saying that the heavenly court has too many people, why not say that you're too weak? Then what about the fact that the great emperor of the underworld isn't here? Asked one of the underworld's immortals. Didn't you hear what I said just now? I've already made it clear that I can only choose from among the people here. The underworld's great sage equaling heaven isn't here, so he naturally isn't counted. With that, he looked at the underworld's immortal and said, "Don't mention anything unfair to me about the underworld. Don't talk to me about the unfairness of the underworld." Since he chose not to come, it means that he has no desire to fight for hegemony. For someone who doesn't want to fight for hegemony, you forced him into that position. It's a form of torture for him. Even without him, there are still many people from the underworld present. Please vote for someone you think can replace Great Sage equaling heaven. But there are no buts. Guzichin seemed to lose his patience. He frowned and said, "Don't give me any more fake logic. If there's someone here you want to vote for, then vote. If there isn't, then forfeit your vote. I don't want to waste any more time talking to you. If anyone dares say anything more useless to me, I don't mind cutting off your path to immortality." Cutting off your path to immortality? His words stunned all the immortals present. So long as they set foot on this path, no one would give up on it. After a brief moment of hesitation, the immortals slowly walked up to the ballot box and cast their precious votes for the person they believed to be the master of the three realms. Time ticked by, and in less than an hour, the immortals' vote was over. Practically every immortal's gaze was fixed on the ballot box, especially the North Pole Emperor and the others. It could be said that they had a fairly good chance of becoming the master of the three realms. As for whether or not they'd voted for him, there was no way of knowing. But thinking about it, there should be, but even so, no one would stand on the moral high ground to criticize him. This was an election to become the master of the three realms. This position was incredibly tempting to anyone. Noble character and unquestionable integrity? To hell with it. Everyone, your voting is over. It seems it's time for me to announce the result. Guzichin hooked his finger at the ballot box. It flew through the air and landed directly in front of him. The ballot box glowed with a fluorescent light. Before long, it disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Chapter 878. A probing battle. As soon as Guzichin finished speaking, the immortals couldn't help but tense up. The results of the election would decide who would become the new master of the three realms, but they'd never considered why they had to listen to Guzichin, nor had they considered why the election was so childish. Every major expert on the stage had a chance to be elected, but the Buddhist region cultivators were completely indifferent. It was obvious they weren't too interested in the position. The great sacred emperor equaling heavens wasn't present in the underworld, so the immortals of the underworld were in a daze during the voting. They didn't know who to choose. Should they choose Xitigarbha? But anyone from the underworld would know that he had no interest in such things. The immortal region cultivators were the same. Swerin didn't care much for power, and Fushi came from the god realm. The only one who was nervous was the Flame Emperor, but compared to the North Pole Emperor, he was clearly too relaxed. Swirenshi, who was sitting on the chair, couldn't help but grab his silk robe. He tried to organize the emotions on his face, but from his Adam's apple that kept swallowing saliva, it could be seen how much importance he attached to this election. He stared fixedly at Guzichin's position, his entire body tensed up. The only person who hadn't paid any attention to the election was Yizichin. He hadn't cared at all since the election began. Even after the voting ended, he sat in his chair. By now, he no longer cared about who would become the master of the three realms. His only thought was to hurry up and end everything, so he could get out of here. There were far too many people he cared about there. There was no way he wouldn't worry. But until then, he could only pray that they'd all come out unscathed. A world of ice and snow. Snowflakes the size of goose feathers fell from the sky. Su Lu'er stood in the air and raised her hands. The snowflakes fell slowly, but in the blink of an eye turned into a blizzard. Before long, Black Dragon's body was covered in a thick coat of snow. He wasn't the only one. The warriors fighting below them also felt the rapid drop in the temperature around them. As they breathed, wisps of white mist rose from their noses and mouths. It was bone-piercingly cold. When the snowflakes touched Black Dragon's skin, he felt a sharp pain. He narrowed his eyes and released the spiritual energy in his body, scattering the snowflakes on his body. Not bad. While speaking, the Black Dragon's body was still emitting hot steam. White steam drifted into the void. He reached out his hand and wiped his purple lip. But that's all. Humph. In the distance, Su Lu'er snorted, her red eyes flashing. Her fair fingers seemed to be playing something in the air, and a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared in the void. Before long, the snowflakes in the air formed a cyclone in front of her. Then, the snowflakes froze, turned into ice. This ice resembled a roaring lion lying on the ground. The only difference between it and a real lion was that it didn't have any charm. Swoosh! Su Lu'er suddenly pointed forward, and two beams of blue light shot forth from her fingertips. The light shone on the lion's eyes, like a finishing touch. Roar! The lion of ice twisted its neck and roared. At the same time, Su Lu'er also shouted, "Don't worry. Ice roar!" The ice lion roared and charged forward. Black Dragon narrowed his eyes and smirked. Shaping and spiritual nurturing. Not bad. Su Lu'er's ice roar just now was what Black Dragon meant by shaping and spiritual nurturing. She'd molded the lion's appearance and added a soul to it. As for how strong the spiritual creature's attacks were, that was determined by the strength of the caster's soul. At that moment, the ice lion's claws swiped at Black Dragon. Black Dragon took a step to the side, barely dodging the attack. However, the cyclone created by the swipe still left a bloody gash on his face. He wiped the blood off his face, then put it in his mouth and sucked. In that short instant, the Black Dragon was able to determine that the roaring lion had almost surpassed the strength of an immortal king. It seems I can't just play around. Twisting his neck, the Black Dragon stretched lazily. Roar! The ice lion roared again. This time, Black Dragon advanced instead of retreating. He dodged the lion's claw, then grabbed its front paw and flung it forward. Boom! The ice lion was flung away, unable to resist at all. It slammed into the mountain wall and shattered into pieces of ice. He tilted his head and looked at Su Lu'er. He said nothing, but his gaze seemed to say, "Come at me, little beauty?" Just as he looked at Su Lu'er playfully, he saw a fearless smile on her lips. She had a backup plan. He tensed up and scanned his surroundings, but there was nothing in the sky that made him feel any danger. Then, he lowered his head. At some point, a thin layer of ice had formed beneath his feet. 3 feet of ice! As she shouted, the ice beneath Black Dragon's feet rapidly spread up his body. His face was filled with panic and confusion. He struggled, but he'd become an ice sculpture. She reached out and snapped her fingers. Shatter! Black Dragon shattered in front of Su Lu'er's eyes. The sparkling, translucent ice crystals shone brilliantly as they slowly dissipated into the air. "You died because you talked too much." Faint disdain surfaced on Su Lu'er's face. Her eyes and tail returned to their normal color. However, she didn't appear overly excited. She maintained her icy demeanor as she slowly walked towards Luo Wei and the others. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. She suddenly turned around and formed a seal with her fingers. Bone-piercing frost. About half a meter in front of her, a thorny flower of ice suddenly appeared. It was covered in sharp thorns, so sharp that anyone who saw them couldn't help but shudder in fear. A trickle of purple blood flowed down the thorns, then they shattered. Humph! Sue Lure smiled confidently. She narrowed her eyes and retreated several dozen meters, putting some distance between them. Before long, a figure appeared where the ice thorns had appeared. Black Dragon. Black Dragon, who'd already turned into ice, was standing there. His hand had been pierced through and was bleeding profusely. "How did you sense it?" frowned Black Dragon. Chapter 879. Defeat Probing. If anyone could hear Sue Lure's words, they'd be absolutely dumbfounded. That incisive attack just now had been nothing more than a probing exchange. Even a peak sky immortal would have a slim chance of survival against Sue Lure's attack just now. That was especially true of her 3 feet of ice. That was a spiritual technique that even a primordial ferocious beast, a drought demon, couldn't do anything about. Yet, Sue Lure called it a probing attack. In that case, just how strong was she? What was even more unexpected was that the injured Black Dragon actually smiled. A dense purple aura appeared over his blood-dripping palm. Before long, his injured hand returned to its original state. Not even a scar remained. "You really are an opponent worthy of me taking seriously. I never would have guessed that someone like you existed in the 3 realms. Given your strength, you should have left this place long ago and ascended to the higher realms. Why are you still here?" "That." Sue Lure narrowed her eyes and smiled. "Why should I tell you?" Black Dragon's expression suddenly stiffened, but he quickly composed himself and nodded. "That's right, there's no need to tell me. But no matter how strong you are, you can only obediently prostrate before me." Buzz. A wave of energy washed over her. Sue Lure's calm expression suddenly furrowed her brows. She could sense that the aura of the person standing in front of her had undergone a heaven-shaking, earth-toppling transformation. Black scales climbed up the Black Dragon's face, and scales also appeared on its arms and neck. Whoosh! He disappeared. Black Dragon suddenly vanished from his previous position, but Sue Lure knew that he hadn't disappeared at all. Rather, bang! A wall of ice appeared to Sue Lure's right. The instant it appeared, Black Dragon punched out. Crack! Shatter! He hadn't disappeared at all. Rather, he'd moved so fast that he couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Bang bang bang! The sky rumbled endlessly. When they looked up, all they could see was the light from the shock waves of energy generated by their collision. As for anything else, it was impossible to distinguish. Boom! With another explosion, their brief exchange came to an end. Although all of this happened in the space of a single breath, in that short period of time, Sue Lure and Black Dragon had exchanged no less than 100 blows. Sue Lure's chest heaved up and down. From her expression, it was clear that she was exhausted. Black Dragon wasn't much better off. He was also panting heavily. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that the person standing above them was the Black Dragon. Interesting. With a smirk, Black Dragon vanished once more. Sue Lure's pupils constricted. She gritted her teeth and charged forward. In the current situation, she could not retreat. If she retreated, then everyone here would die. Boom boom boom. Another series of explosions rang out in the void, and the surrounding mountains were also affected by the explosions. After a short and intense exchange, the two of them separated. This time, Sue Lure's exhaustion was even more obvious than before. She panted heavily, and her neck and forehead were covered in a thin layer of sweat. Faint white steam rose from her body. This sort of close combat wasn't just exhausting her physical strength, but also her mental and spiritual power. At first, she'd been able to fight evenly with Black Dragon, but this time, she discovered that she could no longer keep up with his speed. Then she looked at Black Dragon. At first, when they'd separated, he'd had time to catch his breath. But after this exchange, Sue Lure saw excitement in his eyes. He didn't look tired at all. Instead, he looked as if he'd been injected with adrenaline. His face brimmed with excitement. Power! Nearby, Black Dragon was so excited because he was infatuated with power. Furthermore, this was the first time he'd used this power since he'd sacrificed his clansmen. At first, because he'd only just started using it, he was still unfamiliar with it. That was why he'd shown signs of exhaustion, as if his body couldn't bear the burden of this power. But now that they'd exchanged blows again, his body had grown accustomed to this sort of burden. Naturally, he became more and more adept at it. Black Dragon narrowed his eyes into slits and looked at Su Lure, who was panting heavily. She was a pretty good opponent and a pretty woman, but she could only die. Whoosh! He disappeared. When she saw Black Dragon disappear again, Su Lure could only brace herself and spread her spiritual awareness. Behind me. As quickly as she could, she set up an ice wall behind her, but... Bang! Too slow. Black Dragon's fist slammed into Su Lure's back. Cough. Blood sprayed wildly. But she didn't even have time to wipe the blood from the corners of her mouth. Black Dragon quickly formed an ice wall in front of her. Then he disappeared. Su Lure kept pulling away from Black Dragon. She already knew that she could no longer keep up with his speed. Bang! Bang! She was hit again and again, her injuries worsening. Black Dragon didn't show the slightest mercy to a beautiful woman. He didn't give her any chance to catch her breath. Until... die. He used all his strength to smash his fist into Su Lure's chest. She coughed up a mouthful of blood, then plummeted to the ground like a kite with its string cut. Empress! Luo Wei and the experts of the Beast region, who'd been fighting the demon sovereigns, cried out in alarm. They did everything in their power to repel the enemy in front of them, then rushed towards Su Lure. Catch it! The Beast region experts hurriedly took out a pill and placed it in Su Lure's mouth. The Beast region warriors who'd been fighting the demon warriors retreated. Empress, Empress! The onlookers cried out incessantly. At that moment, Linru hurried over. Give her to me. Pure spiritual energy poured into Su Lure's body. In truth, Linru had been watching from the sidelines as she fought Black Dragon. She could vaguely sense that Black Dragon's strength had definitely surpassed an immortal king's, but he'd been using physical strength the entire time. As long as he didn't use spiritual energy that surpassed an immortal king's, she couldn't attack. As a result, no matter how anxious she was, all she could do was watch from the sidelines. The Beast region experts frowned at Su Lure, who was still coughing up blood. At that moment they sensed someone land on the ground. I've already said that I'm determined to take this land. Give up on your pointless struggle. If you submit, perhaps I'll let you off the hook and spare your lives. Black Dragon laughed arrogantly. He had the right to say such a thing. He'd already beaten Su Lure, the strongest of them, to the point where it was unclear whether she was dead or alive. There was no one left who could stop him. Demon scum, die. The elder of the Phoenix clan charged forward, scowling. Black Dragon sneered and flicked his finger. Bang! The Phoenix elder's forehead was pierced through. Dead. One attack. When Su Lure and the others saw this, they were deeply shaken. Having done all this, Black Dragon pursed his lips and smiled apologetically. Chapter 880. Take this, old Sun He was a little too heavy-handed. When Luo Wei and the others heard these words, they were extremely irritating. There was a fire burning in everyone's hearts, but it dissipated in the blink of an eye. What followed was a deep sense of helplessness. The elder of the Fire Phoenix clan had the strength of a half-step immortal king. Such an expert was actually killed in an instant. Even if they all attacked together, it would be difficult to leave a mark on the Black Dragon's body. But don't blame me too much. There are always people who overestimate themselves and come to provoke me. For example, that old man just now or that little beauty. Black Dragon smiled playfully and raised his eyebrows. I have to say, this little beauty does have some tricks up her sleeve. She actually forced me to use 70% of my strength. 70%. Could it be that this was not his true strength? After saying this, what they felt was not a sense of powerlessness, but despair. Don't look at me like that. Come on, cheer up. What I love the most is the look of resistance when you're in despair. That's right, where's that little beauty? Could it be that she was turned into ashes by me? That's such a pity. Such a pretty little beauty is gone just like that. The black dragon kept mocking him. He enjoyed this feeling. It felt good. The others were also stunned and looked behind them. Su Luer, who'd been lying on the ground, had really disappeared. They didn't even know when she'd disappeared. I may have to disappoint you. A sneer echoed through the air. Everyone watched as a door appeared in the void. Lin Ru walked out, supporting Su Luer by the arm. Su Luer's face was still as pale as a sheet of paper, and her aura was extremely weak. Lin Ru wanted her to stay inside and rest, but she couldn't resist Su Luer's insistence, so she had no choice but to bring her out. He didn't die? That's good news. Black Dragon sneered, then looked her up and down. Little beauty, are you interested in becoming my woman? I can guarantee the safety of your entire clan. Heh. Su Luer merely laughed in disdain. Looks like you refused. Black Dragon put on a pained expression, then looked at Lin Ru. As he fought with Su Luer, he noticed Lin Ru watching from afar. If there were no surprises, then she was most likely the master of the laws. Therefore, he purposely didn't use spiritual energy and purely relied on his physical strength. It looks like you're the master of the laws here, aren't you? Aren't the laws not supposed to interfere with the mundane affairs of the mortal world? Aren't you breaking the rules? Shut up. Lin Ru frowned at the black dragon, her expression dark. Look for loopholes. This fellow had grasped the loophole in the rules, leaving her helpless. Very angry. TSK, the master of the laws is angry. Could it be that you want to attack me? I've never used spiritual energy above the immortal king level before. Lin Ru's eyes narrowed. Are you provoking me? I wouldn't dare. Black Dragon hurriedly waved his hands. How could I possibly dare provoke you, a master of the laws? You are the embodiment of the laws of heaven and earth. Provoking you is the same as committing suicide. But, so long as I haven't broken the rules, what can you do? With that, Black Dragon's expression darkened. If you want to be the laws, then be the laws. Don't get involved in these muddy waters. I'll give you face and address you respectfully, but if I don't, who do you think you are? You. Just obediently stand to the side and watch, master of the laws. Black Dragon sneered and waved his hand disdainfully. Lin Ru clenched her fists helplessly. She really was the master of the laws, the lofty master of the laws, but Black Dragon hadn't broken the rules, so there was nothing she could do. Forget it, I can't be bothered to waste time with you. Will you die on your own, or will I send you to your deaths? After mocking Lin Ru, Black Dragon narrowed his eyes and looked down at the ant-like crowd. Luo Wei and the others froze. Hey, if none of you say anything, then I'll take it that you want me to send you on your way? That's fine. That's more respectable. Black Dragon nodded slightly, then slowly raised his hand. Luo Wei and the others assumed a fighting stance. Even if Black Dragon really was invincible, they wanted to give it a try. Go. Almost at the same time, an explosive roar rang out from the void as the Black Dragon's words rang out. Eat my staff. Before long, countless illusory staffs filled the sky above Black Dragon's head. Great Sage. The eyes of the Beast Region experts, who'd already prepared to fight to the death, lit up with the light of hope. The Holy War Buddha, Sun Wukong. Whether it was in the Heavenly Court or the Beast Region, he was the undisputed #1 war god. His appearance was like a ray of light rising from the abyss. Black Dragon furrowed his brows. Covered in dragon scales, he swung his arm to meet the illusory staff. The great sage's staff carried with it the power of 1,000 caddies. The enormous momentum caused the ground beneath Black Dragon's feet to crack and shatter. Boom! A fierce gust of wind mixed with dust swept through the area. The Beast Region experts hurriedly erected a barrier in front of them. Grow, grow, grow. The Rui Jingu Bang grew thicker and thicker. Black Dragon's legs sank deep into the ground. When the demon sovereigns behind him saw this, they instantly attacked. Wither! A low, soft chant echoed through the sky. Withered flower petals drifted down from the sky. The petals were as black as ink, but even the demon sovereigns felt a palpitating sense of danger. They hurriedly retreated, dodging the petals. The petals fell to the ground, corroding a huge crater. 100 Flowers Sect Master. Luo Wei arched his brows. Damned ants! Roared Black Dragon, who'd been driven deep into the ground by the Rui Jingu Bang. He exerted strength in his arms and knocked the staff away. Ha! Sensing the force of the staff's impact, the great sage sighed, then somersaulted in front of Luo Wei and the others. At the same time, the 100 Flowers Sect Master flew over. Next, Yuan Hong led the monkeys of Mount Huagua, while Li Jiai led the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate. They met up. Luer! When he saw the pale-faced Su Luer, Yuan Hong hurriedly ran over and asked about her well-being. Great Sage Sun and the 100 Flowers Sect Master stood at the very front, like two insurmountable mountains. They faced Black Dragon head-on. 2 more seeking death. Fine, I'll fulfill your wishes. As soon as he finished speaking, thick demonic energy appeared around Black Dragon's body. The great sage blinked repeatedly and tightened his grip on the Rui Jingu Bang. Hee, my grandson, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue with your bluster? However, at that moment, a series of miserable shrieks rang out from behind the demons. Chapter 881. Atai, elder brother, is your brilliant plan to cooperate with this group of people who are neither humans nor ghosts? Zhao Ziming stood at the back of the battlefield and looked at the mindless zombies around him. He couldn't help but gulp. What the hell were these things? In the past, he'd only seen them on TV. Now that he had to team up with this group of ghosts, he was afraid that they would come up and bite him. Zhao Zizhao stood by his side, holding a jade slip in his hand. He smiled sinisterly as he issued orders to the zombies around him. When he heard Zhao Ziming's nervous question, he smiled and said, "That's right. We'll work with them." "No, we'll work with the zombies." Zhao Ziming was so shocked he almost bit his tongue. He carefully avoided the zombies around him. "Why do I feel like it's better to work with the demons? At least they're alive." "Foolish!" Zhao Ziming scolded Zhao Ziming as he mobilized his troop. "Do you still remember our goal? The 3 realms can no longer accommodate us. The demons have wild ambitions, and I don't think they'll keep their promises. Let's work with the zombies and let the 3 sides fight. Wouldn't it be best if we reap the spoils?" "But, are you sure we can reap the spoils?" "Look at what I'm holding." Zhao Zizhao waved the jade slip in his hand. Zhao Zizhao waved the jade slip in his hand. "As long as I have this jade slip, these zombies will listen to my commands. Do you think that we, with an army of hundreds of thousands of zombies, can't reap the benefits of a fisherman? This is a command medallion? More or less." Zhao Zizhao looked at the jade slip in his hand. "Don't think too much about it. Just watch the show." Unruly laughter rang out from the sky. When he heard this laugh, Black Dragon's scale-covered face twitched. The great sage blinked and looked up into the sky. Fiery eyes of truth. A ray of golden light shot out of his eyes, illuminating the cloud-covered sky. It was none other than the 4 zombie progenitors who stood in the air. "It's them." A rare look of seriousness appeared on the great sage's face. He had seen the strength of this group of fellows. Even though he had gained some enlightenment recently, he couldn't guarantee that he could defeat this group of fellows. The other clansmen of the Beast region looked grave as well. When Black Dragon saw the 4 zombie progenitors, the muscles on his face began to twitch violently. It was this group of people that caused the demon race to be unable to return home. The eyes of the other demon sovereigns were bloodshot. At that moment Li Min-yi, who had been taking care of Su Yun, rushed over. She was also stunned when she saw the zombie progenitor. She couldn't help but recall the scene of her best friend Hua Kuei's death. After trembling slightly, she took a deep breath and walked in front of the black dragon. Yun told me to tell you that the Zhao brothers are missing. Got it. The black dragon's expression was frighteningly gloomy. Those two mortals actually dared to play this trick on them. Gu Li, you actually dared to come? Roared the enraged black dragon. He really hadn't seen Gu Li, but the zombie progenitors definitely had something to do with him. His Excellency Gu Li is busy. He isn't here. Hanba laughed, then arched her brows. But His Excellency Gu Li ordered us to kill you all. That's great, said the ugly, Lolita-voiced woman. I was just about to go look for you. Now that you've come to throw your lives away, it saves me a lot of trouble. Black Dragon's expression darkened. Kill them all. In an instant, the three sides were embroiled in a chaotic battle. In order to ensure fairness, and openness, I've decided to show you the results of the vote. Gu Zichen sat in his chair. His eyes narrowed into slits as a curtain appeared before everyone's eyes. Above the curtain was the result of the vote. Practically all the immortals looked up. They noticed that nearly 30 people had forfeited their votes, as well as quite a few unknown minor immortals who'd only gotten one vote. There was no need to think too much about it. They'd surely written their names in when they voted. In any case, the rules didn't say they couldn't vote for themselves. The seated major powers looked over with interest. Although most of them didn't care too much about whether or not they got elected, this concerned the future master of the three realms. They had to pay attention. The most nervous of them all was the North Pole Emperor. The instant the results came out, his eyes widened as he carefully searched for his name and the number of votes he'd received, calculating his ranking. In stark contrast to him, there were two other people in the crowd. Yi Zichen, Gu Li. They hadn't paid any attention to the results at all. Gu Li's gaze was fixed on Yi Zichen the entire time, while Yi Zichen's head was lowered in thought. Where exactly is he? The North Pole Emperor muttered to himself, his heart in turmoil. Then, he found his name in the middle of the list. North Pole Emperor, 27 votes. 27. If his memory served him right, he had never seen anyone with more than 27 votes before. Could it be? As he considered this, he hurriedly scrolled down the list. I didn't think I'd get 10 more votes. Although he didn't care too much, everyone naturally paid attention to their own votes first. Fushi was no exception. When he saw that he only had 10 votes, he knew that he could say goodbye to his position as master of the three realms now. Just a moment ago, he'd seen the Flame Emperor get 15 votes. Look! At that moment, the Flame Emperor suddenly pointed at the leaderboard. The rest of the Almighties followed his finger and looked over. "A tie," said one of the immortals at the bottom of the stairs. The others looked over as well. The Yellow Emperor, 28 vote. Qiyu, 28 vote. How could there be a tie? Also, it seems they're the two with the highest vote. What should we do if the two with the highest votes are a tie? Hey, did you notice? The North Pole Emperor has 27 vote. He's just one vote behind them. How pitiful. Why haven't you noticed the main point? Don't you see that these two are the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu? Said an elderly immortal. Here, Emperor Yi is the reincarnation of the Yellow Emperor. Who is Qiyu? Also, why did Qiyu get 28 votes? Have you never thought about it? The Yellow Emperor Qiyu. All of the seated mighty figures also frowned. Coincidentally, Emperor Ziwei was also present to see the tallies. To tell the truth, he hadn't seen anyone with more than 27 votes. The highest was the Flame Emperor, who'd thought he'd become the master of the three realms. But at the bottom of the list, 28 votes. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. He sighed dejectedly, but then he suddenly noticed that, Qiyu. Chapter 882. Recommendation. As they chatted and laughed, the bald Gu Li and his Kasaya reached the top of the step. Anyone capable of becoming an immortal had a sharp mind. Of course, there were only a few who were as dumb as Yang Jian. Based on Gu Li's previous words and actions, the immortals had figured out his identity as Qiyu. However, none of the seated experts reacted in any way. They knew full well that no matter how sharp their words were, they wouldn't be able to hurt Gu Li. With their spiritual powers sealed, they were nothing more than mere mortals. What they cared about the most wasn't the tide vote, but the outcome of the vote. It could be said that Qiyu and the immortal region were in dire strait. Although the underworld and heavenly court didn't have any direct conflicts with him, their relationship wasn't exactly harmonious either. The Buddhist domain transcended the three realms, and they'd only sent a handful of bodhisattvas. But here was the problem. Just who on earth had voted for Gu Li? And why did he get 28 votes? Gu Zichen's results were indeed public, but they didn't include details of the immortals' votes. Gu Li noticed the change in their gazes, but all he did was smile playfully. He naturally wasn't stupid enough to point at them and laugh. "Hey, you idiots! You didn't even know your subordinates were betrayed by me, did you?" If he'd really done that, then he'd really be a moron. True and false, false and true. Who exactly stood on his side? He just let these self-righteous bastards guess. "You've all seen the results." Gu Zichen smiled calmly. The results didn't faze him in the slightest. He looked at the immortals present and spoke in a calm voice. "The top vote-getters are the Yellow Emperor Yi Zichen and Chiyou's reincarnation, Gu Li. However, only one person can inherit the seal of the Master of the Three Realms, so one of them will have to inherit the position. I highly recommend Emperor Yi for this heavy responsibility. No one would have guessed that the first to speak would be the North Pole Emperor, the one most interested in the position." Emperor Ziwei was indeed very disappointed to have lost the election by a single vote. He was ambitious and had aspirations. If he could become the Lord of the Three Realms, he believed that he would be able to truly display his abilities and impart his ideals to the entire Three Realms. But losing was losing, and feeling disappointed was feeling disappointed, since the result was so obvious. He could only choose between Gu Li and Yi Zichen. Naturally, he would stand on Yi Zichen's side. The reason is simple. He is the reincarnation of Qiyu. Everyone present was aware of Qiyu's identity, so there was no need to talk about it here. But even if he didn't care about his identity in his previous life, the farce he had caused not too long ago made him unworthy of the position of Master of the Three Realms. The Master of the Three Realms, as the name implied, was the master who ruled over the three realms. The person in charge of this position had to have the world in his heart, and his three views had to be upright. I dare not be certain what the future of the three realms would be like if Chiyou's reincarnation were to take the throne. I recommend Emperor Yi as the master of the three realms. All of the other immortals couldn't help but give him a thumbs up upon hearing this. The minor immortals weren't aware of the North Pole Emperor's obsession with this position, but all of the immortals who had reached this position were well aware of it. Yi Zichen had been able to quickly recover from his disappointment and stand by his side without any personal feelings at all. From the immortals' point of view, this wasn't easy. "I also highly recommend Brother Yi for this position," said the Flame Emperor. The instant the North Pole Emperor finished speaking, the Flame Emperor added, "Brother Yi is a member of the Immortal Region. Originally, we should avoid arousing suspicion. But even if I didn't say anything, I'm sure all of you are inclined toward Brother Yi. Indeed, Brother Yi hasn't been with us for long, but I'm sure you've all seen how he conducts himself," said Fushi. Fushi spoke at this moment, and then his eyes instantly darkened. "But before that, I'm very curious. Just who voted for Qiyu?" All of the immortals looked at the immortals on their side. They weren't so naive as to think that it wasn't someone on their side who voted. In a situation like this, it could have been anyone's subordinate. When they sensed their leader's sharp gaze, very few immortals dared meet his gaze, no matter how they looked at it. Perhaps some had a guilty conscience, or perhaps they didn't dare anger their master. It was like a pool of muddy water, It was hard to see through. Once this is over, I'll definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. Some of the immortals bowed their heads even lower, and the mighty figures on the chairs took note of their reactions. Although they hadn't said they'd investigate thoroughly, they'd definitely investigate in private. Their subordinates had betrayed them. If they didn't investigate thoroughly, they'd definitely cause trouble. If we have to take sides, I might stand with Emperor Yi, said King Ksitigarbha. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who was supposed to be neutral, also spoke at this moment. He did not speak as much as his predecessors, nor did he give many reasons. He stood with Yi Zichen. Reasons? Did the people of the Buddhist region need reasons? For a moment, practically everyone stood by Yi Zichen's side. Guli didn't show the slightest displeasure. He'd long since expected this. He simply listened calmly as the immortals voiced their opinions. When no one spoke up, he arched his brows and smiled. Gu Zichen, who do you think this position should go to? These brainless immortals spouted a bunch of useless nonsense, but the way I see it, it's of no use at all. The decision is in your hands. Even if they say all sorts of things, so what? But I presume you want to give your position to Yi Zichen? TCH, in the end, you've worked so hard for nothing. Har! Gu Zichen pursed his lips into a smile. He could tell that Guli was mocking him on purpose. Guli wanted to use this sort of trick to make him apprehensive? All Gu Zichen could say was that Guli's plan was too simple. He didn't belong here, and no one knew him. He didn't need to worry about public opinion. Even if he did decide to give his position to Yi Zichen, it wouldn't affect him in the slightest. Most importantly, he didn't have the right to decide. His methods were truly extraordinary. Even in the upper three realms, he was a towering figure, but he wasn't strong enough to influence the laws of a world that didn't belong to him. Gu Zichen smiled indifferently, then chuckled. I've heard everyone's thoughts, but I'm sorry, I have no way of deciding who this position belongs to. The Master of the Three Realms seal is indeed with me, but I can't decide who its final master will be. Chapter 883. Withdrawal and rejection. It would naturally be best if they fought. After comprehending the 3,000 great Daos of the Buddhist domain, Guli had to admit that Yi Zichen was no match for him. Just then, he heard Gu Zichen say, "Let's go." Of course not. Guli arched his brows. In truth, he wasn't all that surprised by this response. The way he saw it, the only reason Gu Zichen was constantly refusing to fight was because he was protecting Yi Zichen, worried that something bad might happen to him. It seemed that in Gu Zichen's heart, Yi Zichen was no match for him. As he considered this, Gu Li's lips curled into a smile, then he looked at Gu Zichen. Then what do you think we should do now? You were the one who suggested the vote. I thought you were the one who decided everything, but now you're saying you don't have the right to do so? Could it be that you have some misgivings? If you want to give the position to Yi Zichen, then give it to him. I don't care. We can give this position to Brother Yi, one of the great figures said. The other major powers nodded in agreement. Even the ordinary immortals at the bottom of the stairs nodded in agreement. Although Yi Zichen belonged to the immortal region, the immortals of the underworld and heavenly court were extremely close to him due to the red packet server. Although their boss wouldn't be the one to become the master of the three realms in the end, Yi Zichen wasn't bad either. Done. As the immortals clamored in agreement, Gu Zichen gestured for them to stop talking. I have no choice but to repeat myself. In truth, I didn't decide on this method of voting. It was decided by the Great Tao. Of course, I'm also very surprised that it's a tie, but are you sure it's a tie? The surrounding immortals were stunned. The tallies were already clear. Yi Zichen and Guli were tied, but Gu Zichen still said that. Senior, what do you mean? The Flame Emperor asked. Everyone, please calm down. This isn't the final result yet, said Gu Zichen. This will be interesting. When Guli heard this, he couldn't help but smile playfully. He glanced at the immortals below and the votes up above. Do you really want those who've already given up to vote again? Of course not. They chose to abstain, so they won't have the chance to vote. Then there are also people who have never voted before, right? With that, the surrounding immortals all looked towards Yang Jian and the great sacred emperor equaling heaven. Only the two of them were not present. Yang Jian was already on the verge of ascending to godhood. There was no way he would be able to come here. Could it be that the great sacred emperor equaling heaven would come? Isn't the great emperor in seclusion, trying to break through and ascend? The immortals couldn't help but discuss among themselves. Everyone knew that the great sacred emperor equaling heaven hadn't appeared for half a year in order to ascend. As the immortals discussed amongst themselves, Yi Zichen, who'd been silent for a long time, spoke up. Can I quit? His tone was indescribably calm and emotionless, but his words caused a huge uproar among the surrounding immortals. Withdraw. Yi Zichen actually chose to back out. Brother Yi, we're all on your side. Flame Emperor couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in relief. This position is definitely yours. I know, right? If Emperor Yi withdraws, will the position of Master of the Three Realms fall into Chiyo's hands? Brother Yi! Brother Yi! The major powers tried to comfort him, but none of them noticed that Yi Zichen's eyes were bloodshot. It wasn't until he looked up that the crowd noticed his bloodshot eyes. I appreciate everyone's good intentions, but right now I just want to hurry up and end this. Let me go. His tone was still calm, but it was obvious from his eyes that something was off. If I give the seal to Guli, does that mean the struggle for supremacy is over? Then I'll be able to leave. In that case, let's just deal with it. Ever since an hour ago, or rather, ever since Guli appeared, Yi Zichen's heart had been filled with anxiety despite himself. He'd been worried about the outside world the entire time, especially the people closest to him. The unknown was always the scariest thing. Yi Zichen didn't think he'd be of much use here, but at the very least, he'd be able to see everything with his own eyes. But now, all he could do was sit here and fight for the position of Master of the Three Realms. He didn't want to waste any more time. He didn't want to waste even a second. No. Despite Yi Zichen's words, Gu Zichen's refusal left him no room for negotiation. No? Only then did Yi Zichen's tone change somewhat. He looked at Gu Zichen with bloodshot eyes. If you hadn't forcibly transported me here, I'd be standing in front of Maple City's gates right now, fighting the demons alongside them. Just now, while he was voting, Yi Zichen had taken out his phone and seen the forced teleportation page. He'd forcibly turned his phone back on and teleported him here. Only Gu Zichen could do this. Right now, I shouldn't be sitting here discussing the so-called Master of the Three Realms with you. I need to go out and take care of the people I love. I don't have any more time to waste with you. Can you let me go? No. Gu Zichen's reply was as meticulous as ever. Until the election is truly over, you have to stay here. But I said I'd withdraw. You have no right to withdraw. Creak. Yi Zichen clenched his fist. In his anxiety and panic, he finally couldn't suppress his emotions any longer. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Gu Zichen. Then if anything happens to them, are you going to take responsibility? Them. Yi Zichen trusted that Gu Zichen knew exactly who he was talking about. You can't leave, said Gu Zichen. Ha, if Emperor Yi wants to leave, just let him go, sneered Guli. At that moment Guli sneered. You forced him to stay, so he must hate you to death. Our Emperor Yi cares about the world and is worried about the situation outside. Hurry up and let him go. Let him see for himself what's happening outside. Everyone could tell that Guli was intentionally provoking him, but in Yi Zichen's ears it was like a fuse. All the repressed emotions in his heart were set aflame. Boom! Instantly, fierce gusts of wind appeared around him. No one could face them head-on. I'll say it one last time. Let me go. All the immortals could sense Yi Zichen's fury. Yi Zichen's eyes narrowed as he stared intently at Gu Zichen. but the result was still. Chapter 884. Trainee Meng Pa Junior Meng Xiangbuz. Somewhere in the 18 abysses of hell, an inexplicable energy fluctuation appeared. The jailer of the underworld sensed this fluctuation and couldn't help but look in that direction, but unexpectedly, Emperor. When they saw the newcomer, the prison guards couldn't help but bow. Great sacred Emperor equaling heaven. Perhaps no one would have thought that the great sacred Emperor equaling heavens was cultivating in the 18 hells of the underworld. The great Emperor nodded at the group of prison guards and pointed at one of them. Send Meng Xiang to me. With that, the great Emperor turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. The prison guards were still immersed in the shock of meeting the great Emperor. As prison guards of the 18 hells, their status in the underworld wasn't particularly high. Usually, they had more dealings with the 10 Yama kings. Now that they could see the great Emperor, they were extremely excited. The only pity was that he didn't get to speak more with the great Emperor. I didn't think we'd be able to meet the elusive great Emperor. That's right, but why would the great Emperor come to our 18 hells? Even the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva rarely comes here. The great Emperor's thoughts aren't something we can guess, right? Didn't the great Emperor send someone to find Meng Xiang? Hurry up and go. Don't delay the great Emperor. One of the prison guards spoke up. At this moment, one of the prison guards hurriedly put down what he was doing and spoke to the other prison guards beside him. Brothers, I'll be going then. Hidden in the 18 hells, the jailer disappeared. The other prison guards looked at the spot where he disappeared and couldn't help but say enviously, "Lucky guy." In their opinion, it was a supreme honor to have the opportunity to run errands for the great Emperor. Bridge of Helplessness. Meng Xiang was dressed in an old-fashioned robe and had a small flower on her head. She sat on a chair next to the Bridge of Helplessness, swinging her legs. Her badge was still Trainee Mengpo, but to be honest, she was a little tired of this job. The people she faced were always those who were attached to the mortal world. This made her, who had never left the underworld, full of curiosity about the outside world. Moreover, her sweet looks were indeed not suitable to be a Mengpo. Mengpo, as the name suggested. An old granny. She had a youthful and beautiful face. To be honest, many people who had died in the underworld thought that they had come to heaven when they saw her. So boring. Meng Xiang rested her chin on her hand as she looked at the other end of the bridge. She was really curious about what the world on the other side of the bridge was like. Swoosh. At this moment, an ugly jailer suddenly appeared in front of the long table where she rested her chin on her hand. Meng Xiang screamed and almost fell to the ground when she saw the jailer. After a long while, she finally collected her emotions and looked at the prison guard in front of her. "Who are you? You must be Lord Meng Xiang." The status of a prison guard in the underworld was even lower than that of a probationary Mengpo, so it wasn't an exaggeration for him to refer to Meng Xiang as Your Excellency. "It's me. What do you want?" Meng Xiang blinked her bright eyes and answered with some intensity. The prison guard, who had to maintain a fierce expression in the face of the evildoers of the 18 levels of hell, forced a smile at this moment. "It's like this lowly one is a jailer of the 18 hells. The Emperor appeared at this lowly one's place just now and asked this lowly one to tell you that the Emperor is waiting for you in his palace. The Emperor is looking for me." Meng Xiang pointed at her own nose with a small, fair finger. "Yes, that's what the Emperor said," said the prison guard. "Don't lie to me even though I'm not well educated. Why would someone as high and mighty as the Emperor specifically ask for me? Besides, even if the Emperor really wanted to find me, he wouldn't come all the way to the 18 hells and ask you to come find me." "This lowly one isn't sure either." The prison guard smiled apologetically. "You should go take a look." Meng Xiang looked the prison guard up and down. He wouldn't dare use the Emperor's name to spread false information. After a moment's thought, she nodded and replied, "All right, I'll go take a look. But if I leave, there won't be anyone left on the Bridge of Hells. Why don't you keep watch for me for a while? This lowly one. All right, then it's decided. Meng Xiang let the prison guard sit in her previous seat, then turned to leave. After a few steps, she stopped again. But I still have to tell you, your smile is really ugly. Meng Xiang giggled and disappeared over the misty bridge of hells. The prison guard couldn't help but smile bitterly. At that moment, a timid-looking fatty walked over cautiously with his neck shrunk. You're Meng. The fatty stepped off the bridge and walked straight to the prison guard. As soon as he opened his mouth, he saw the prison guard's fiendish face. Mommy, I don't want to die anymore, I don't want to die anymore, The prison guard, who had just become Mengpo, found everything new and interesting. He hadn't expected that someone would come over as soon as he sat down. He was a little excited, but the other's reaction made him very unhappy. Come over here. He grabbed the fatty with his right hand and pulled him over. Then, he picked up the ladle on the table and scooped into the bucket beside him. Drink it for me. Gulp, gulp. The prison guard forced Meng Po's soup into the fatty's mouth. Gradually, the fatty stopped struggling. Until he was completely obedient. All right, go on in. The fatty obediently walked into the underworld. The prison guard sat in his chair, his heart filled with a sense of accomplishment. Coincidentally, at this moment, another skinny man walked over. You've got quite a lot to live on. As soon as he finished speaking, he hooked his finger at the skinny man and said with a dark frown, Come and drink the soup. Mommy! You want to run? Come back here. The nightmares of the dead were coming. At least for the time being. Meng Xiang, of course, had no idea of the horrible conditions the dead were in. She skipped over to the emperor's residence and stood in front of the door, staring at it curiously. After being in the underworld for so long, this was her first time here. Come in. Huh! Meng Xiang froze, then couldn't help but chuckle. The emperor is really amazing. She'd just arrived at the door, but the emperor could already tell. The way she saw it, the emperor was very strong. When I go in, I have to talk to the emperor about not being a trainee Mengpo anymore. I've been a Mengpo for so long, but I haven't been promoted. So many people after me have been promoted. Besides, I haven't asked for leave in so long. It shouldn't be a problem to talk to the emperor and ask him to let me go out to play for a few days. At the thought, her entire face lit up with happiness. After hearing so many stories about the mortal world on the Bridge of Helplessness, she was truly curious about that new world. Creak. She pushed open the door to the emperor's residence, only to be greeted by a blinding white thud. Chapter 885. The crucial vote. Fierce winds howled. Yi Zichen's sleeves fluttered in the wind, and faint imperial lights swirled around his body. Gu Li watched from a distance, his expression dark. The Emperor Star's fortune should belong to him. I'll take it back sooner or later. As he angrily roared in his heart, he withdrew his gaze and replaced it with a playful expression as he observed the situation in the arena. He wanted to see just how Gu Zichen was going to resolve this. The surrounding immortals looked nervously at Yi Zichen and Gu Zichen. This was no longer the time to try and dissuade them. However, what concerned them the most was why they still couldn't use their spiritual energy, but Yi Zichen could. Could he be using the power of the stars too? They inexplicably recalled the imperial aura he'd emanated earlier, as well as the appearance of the North Pole star. So it's Brother Yi. Fuxi nodded in understanding, but soon after, he became even more nervous. Since the Emperor's star was illuminating, Yi Zichen couldn't afford to let anything happen to him. Perhaps the people of the lower three realms didn't quite understand what the Emperor's star represented, but as someone who'd once lived in the God realm, he knew exactly what it represented. Brother Yi. By now, Yi Zichen had long since stopped listening to anyone's advice. He simply stared intently at Gu Zichen. Are you going to let me go or not? Was the lesson I taught you not enough? Sensing Yi Zichen's killing intent, Gu Zichen's expression grew unsightly. You're so weak, yet you want to kill me? Let me go, said Yi Zichen. I said no means no. You have to stay here until the voting is over. I know what you're worried about, but do you really think you'll be of any use even if you go out now? Gu Zichen narrowed his eyes at Yi Zichen. If the situation outside is bad, then even if you go out, it'll still be bad. Are you going to let me go or not? Yi Zichen wasn't in the mood to pay any attention to Gu Zichen's words. He was truly panicking. Based on his sixth sense, he was sure the situation outside was bad. Furthermore, pay attention to Gu Zichen's words. He mentioned the worst. He never mentioned the second possibility. Some people might think Yi Zichen was being too full of himself, but who wouldn't do the same when their loved ones were in danger? Yi Zichen was immortal. He wasn't one of those old geezers who could sever their ties with the mortal world after becoming an immortal for several thousand years. Looks like I have no choice but to use some forceful methods against you. With that, Gu Zichen raised his hand, transformed it into a palm seal, and slapped it towards Yi Zichen. The surrounding immortal's pupils constricted. Bang! A beam of light suddenly appeared between Gu Zichen and Yi Zichen. Who told you to hurt him? These words were obviously directed at Gu Zichen. When the immortals noticed his childish yet somewhat piercing words, they all looked over. Meng Xiang. The people of the underworld were the first to recognize her. Although Meng Xiang was only a probationary Meng Po, her adorable appearance was deeply loved by the immortals of the underworld. Yi Zichen arched his brows. This name. Why does it sound so familiar? All of a sudden, he recalled that he had met a child named Meng Xiang when he visited the underworld. Could it be her? But if he remembered correctly, that child was only a human immortal. Yet now, she was able to block Gu Zichen's attack. Even if Gu Zichen hadn't used his full strength, even if he'd only used a tenth of it, that wasn't something an immortal king could withstand. Who told you to hurt him? Meng Xiang glared at Gu Zichen. If the people of the underworld looked closely, they would notice that Meng Xiang was taller and more mature than before. Before, she'd been cute, but now she was cold and elegant. She stared intently at Gu Zichen, her expression devoid of any hint of fear. You're finally here. Gu Zichen laughed, then ignored Meng Xiang's question and returned to his original position. Meng Xiang glanced at him a few times, then anxiously looked him up and down. You're not hurt, are you? I'm not. That's good. Meng Xiang smiled, but the immortals watched in bewilderment. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that Meng Xiang's appearance had them all dumbfounded. Little Meng Xiang, what are you doing here? Asked one of the underworld immortals. Meng Xiang blinked, then turned to look at him. The great emperor sent me here. The great emperor! The immortals were in an uproar. When Gu Li saw this, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Little Meng Xiang, did the great emperor say anything to you? Say anything? Meng Xiang pursed her lips, then flipped her right hand and produced a card. This was the same card the immortals had voted on earlier. The great emperor told me to help him vote, and my vote. Ding. The numbers in the center of the stage suddenly changed. Yi Zichen's vote had originally been tied, but now he had an extra vote. Instantly, a ray of light shone down from above Yi Zichen's head. The voting is over. The Yellow Emperor Yi Zichen has taken first place with 29 votes and obtained the seal of the Lord of the Three Realms. The other immortals on the leaderboard will receive spiritual power, power of faith, natural treasures, and other rewards according to their rankings. Gu Zichen reached out and pointed at the other immortals. Their bodies glowed with a faint, multicolored light. The rewards have been distributed. Once you've confirmed your mission rewards, you may leave. With that, he and Yi Zichen disappeared simultaneously. The immortals who'd received their rewards felt their bodies change slightly. They opened their spatial artifacts, and at some point their natural treasures appeared. Rumble. At this moment, a door opened in the pure white space, and the Supreme Being standing on the steps spoke. Let's not waste any more time. We'd best hurry back and make arrangements. Brother Fushi is right. I must return to the heavenly court as soon as possible. Farewell! Farewell! The immortals left one by one. The immortals of the underworld surrounded little Meng Xiang as well. It had to be said that little Meng Xiang was a rare beauty in the underworld. Quite a few male immortals pursued her. Little Meng Xiang, let's go back together, said one of the underworld's immortals. Meng Xiang squinted at him and smiled. Forget it then. Forget it then, I have other things to do. Also, don't call me little Meng Xiang from now on. Call me little fairy. With that, little Meng Xiang floated away. Chapter 886. Attack brazenly, attack brazenly. Gu Zichen was no longer in charge of the pure white space, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Buddhist domain had left as well. There was no one left who could threaten Gu Li. He'd chosen this moment to attack, taking advantage of the fact that the immortals had let down their guard. Furthermore, now that they'd all left, it was absolutely disadvantageous to him. Now was the perfect opportunity to weaken them. Die! His hand pierced through the chest of an immortal. This sudden turn of events instantly sent the immortals into a panic. The immortals scrambled to get to the door, but bang! 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 Gu Li was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. Wherever he passed, he left bloody corpses in his wake. Brothers, we've recovered our spiritual power. Someone suddenly yelled. So what if it's recovered? You're all going to die. Gu Li's brows furrowed in disdain. He cracked his neck. The immortals calmed down after learning that their spiritual power had recovered. With immortal spiritual power, what was there to be afraid of? Their frantic flight gradually faded away. The immortals stared at him, their eyes bloodshot. Among the immortals who'd just died, there were some close friends of theirs. Just now they'd fled because they subconsciously assumed that without spiritual power, they couldn't resist. But now, things were different. Not bad. If you want revenge, come on, said Gu Li disdainfully. He curled his finger disdainfully at them, causing the surrounding immortals to frown. Brothers! Attack! A quarter of an hour passed. By the time Gu Li grabbed one of the fleeing immortals by the neck and snapped it, the area around him had already become a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. A few seconds after the immortals attacked, they realized the difference in strength between the two sides. They wanted to run, but they couldn't. Bang! He tossed the dead immortal to the ground. Only 3 immortals remained. Gu Li narrowed his eyes and walked towards them. The 3 immortals sat paralyzed on the ground, rubbing their heads backwards. As I'd said before, the ones participating in the struggle for supremacy were all newcomers. They'd never seen much of anything. The scene before them had long since scared them out of their wit. Don't be nervous. At that moment, the blood-covered Gu Li's lips curled into a smile. He put his blood-stained finger into his mouth, sucked it a little, twisted his neck, and raised his eyebrows. I'll give you a chance. I'll turn around and count to 10. Within these 10, you can run. However, how far you can run will depend on your luck. With that, Gu Li really did turn around. 1, 2. The 3 immortals looked at each other in dismay. After a brief moment of hesitation, run. They used practically all of their spiritual energy to flee, but Gu Li simply smiled and continued counting to himself. 5, 6. They've already escaped. At this moment, a man suddenly appeared beside him. The other party looked at Gu Li in confusion. What's the point of letting them go on purpose? At that moment, Gu Li looked back at the fleeing immortals. He had no intention of chasing after them. Isn't this interesting? Let them go back and inform the elders. Those old fellows will definitely be very angry. Is provoking them on purpose really beneficial to us? Who knows? Gu Li shrugged indifferently. I just think it's more interesting this way, that's all. With that, he arched his brows and glanced at the man beside him. How are those guys over there? Did they obediently follow my instructions? You really were tricked, said the man beside him. The zombie progenitors have already led their people over, but they just so happened to run into the demons and the people of the three realms fighting. Right now, it's a three-way chaotic battle. A chaotic battle? Ghoulie narrowed his eyes like a viper's, then smirked. It's better if it's a bit more chaotic. Come on, let's head over and make things even more chaotic. The cloudy palace of the Golden Arches. After returning to the heavenly court, the North Pole Emperor didn't hesitate to summon the immortals to his great hall. The demons are attacking. Our heavenly court can't just stand by and watch. In truth, Emperor Yi should be in charge of the situation, but he's not here. Fellow Taoists, what do you think we should do? Attack, said the God of Thunder without hesitation. The situation outside is dire. It's not just the demons, there's also the blood zombies, which gave us such a headache. Now that the beast region has taken action, our heavenly court should do the same. I don't think so, said a white-bearded old man. An elder with a long white beard walked out of the hall and said, In my opinion, our heavenly court should bide our time and not make a move. Right now, the main battlefield is outside the immortal region. It's the immortal region that has the biggest headache, not the heavenly court. If we attack rashly, we'll only weaken the heavenly court. Count of the Wind, are you still thinking about your own interests at a time like this? Rebuked the God of Thunder. Humph, the God of Thunder is truly righteous, but I doubt the other two realms will be so careless. You can't harm others, but you can't be careless, scolded the Count of the Wind. I agree with the God of Thunder. I agree with the Count of the Wind. Some of the immortals began to take sides. The North Pole Emperor knit his brows. In truth, the two immortals were right. As the commander of the heavenly court, he had to weigh the pros and cons, great Emperor. At that moment, a blood-soaked immortal suddenly appeared at the entrance to the cloudy palace of the Golden Arches. The instant he arrived, he collapsed to the ground as if he'd lost all strength. Who goes there? Don't you know we're in a meeting? Drag him away, scolded the Count of the Wind. Count of the Wind, are you crazy? Can't you see the blood on his body? Rebuked the God of Thunder, then ran over to the immortal. Brother, what's going on? Dead, they're all dead, murmured the immortal. What's dead? The God of Thunder frowned. If the demons had attacked the heavenly court, someone would have definitely reported it, but they hadn't. Clearly, the heavenly court wasn't under attack. Yes, everyone who went to the struggle is dead. The North Pole Emperor couldn't sit still any longer. He really was too worried about the situation in the outside world, so he left on his own. When he returned, he called for an emergency meeting and paid no attention to the other immortals. He quickly walked over and frowned at the immortal. You said everyone who went to the struggle is dead? What on earth is going on? It's Qi Yu. Xiao Xian used a weak voice to describe the scene again. Boom. Chapter 887. The Great Sage Son Who Drew Hatred. Great Emperor, please send out your troops. The immortals in the hall all spoke up at the same time. Even some of the immortals who'd sided with the Count of Wind requested to send out their troops. This was too much. They'd slaughtered the heavenly court's immortals and left one behind to deliver the news. This was an insult to the heavenly court. The heavenly court couldn't possibly swallow such humiliation. The North Pole Emperor wasn't a hot-blooded person. After hearing the little immortal's words, his body began to tremble. Even if the immortals didn't ask for permission, they had to send out their troops. God of Thunder, Heavenly Kingly, Third Prince Neza, Count of Wind, Lord of Rain. Present. More than half of the people in the cloudy palace of the Golden Arches stepped forward. Each of you will lead 100,000 heavenly soldiers to reinforce the heavenly court of the Golden Arches. As for Qi Yu, capture him alive. Understood. The God of Thunder, Heavenly Kingly, and Third Prince Neza didn't hesitate at all. They took out their command talismans and left. The Count of Wind and Lord of Rain stayed behind and frowned. Great Emperor, our heavenly court's defenses will be too weak. I've made up my mind. Send out your troops. If the two of you don't want to, you can give me your command talismans. I'll personally lead the troops. From the great Emperor's expression, the Count of Wind and Lord of Rain knew that he wouldn't change his mind. After letting out a sigh, they could only respond. Understood. It wasn't just the heavenly court. The underworld and immortal region reacted the same way. Almost at the same time, the underworld and the heavenly court also sent out their elites to reinforce the celestial domain's Maple City. It was a chaotic battle. To tell the truth, the great sage was the happiest of them all. He wielded the Rui Jingu Bang and smacked anyone he didn't like. If anyone chased after him, he'd use a body-freezing art, flip, and run faster than anyone else. Hey, evildoer, take this! The great sage abruptly smashed down with his stick once more. After that, he turned tail and ran away. He was indeed having fun, but that didn't mean the situation was optimistic. It was precisely because the great sage ran after one hit that they were at a disadvantage. Why did he run away after hitting him with a stick? Because with his skills, there was no way he could compete with these people on the field. He had no choice but to take advantage of them and leave. He was able to take advantage of the situation and run away, but the others weren't as lucky as him. Although it was called a chaotic war, for some reason, the demons and zombies seemed to have reached some sort of agreement and focused their firepower on the three realms. The number of warriors on the three realms side had decreased sharply, and their high-end combat forces were suffering unspeakably. In just a few hours, the three realms had already sent out 3 signals for reinforcements. This was definitely not good news for them. Bang! As the great sage played around, he swung his staff again. This time, it landed squarely on Hanba's head. This damned monkey! The moment the rod landed, a huge bump appeared on Hitorigami's head. He was already ugly to begin with. Coupled with the fact that he had the head of the god of longevity, he looked especially ridiculous. I want you dead! Hanba leaped up and charged towards the great sage. When he saw someone chasing after him, the great sage grinned. Bang! Another blow from the stick. Hitorigami, who had been charging upwards, was smashed back down. Heh, eat my staff! Bang! Another blow from the stick. Ah, damned monkey! Come on, come on! The great sage stood on top of Hanba's head and shook his butt incessantly. From time to time, he would poke her with his staff. Although it wouldn't cause any substantial harm to her, it still had the effect of disgusting people. Hanba gnashed her teeth in hatred, but she couldn't fly. Facing the great sage, who could ride the clouds, there was nothing she could do. The great sage was having a lot of fun, but he wasn't as relaxed as he appeared. The situation on the field was difficult to handle. He could indeed provoke these guys and taunt them into focusing all their hatred on him, but that wasn't a brilliant move. Whether it was the zombie progenitors or the mighty black dragon, none of them could deal with them. None of them could deal with them. This was definitely not good news. It was only temporary that he was toying with this group of people here. As long as they focused and dealt with the others, the result would be unthinkable. But he couldn't think of any good ideas right now. The heavenly court had all gone to participate in some struggle for supremacy. All he could do now was stall for time and wait for them to arrive. When he thought of this, bang! Another strike with the stick came down. Monkey! Hanba's shrill roar echoed through the sky. The great sage shrunk his neck, but continued to shake his butt in fear. Then, another blow from the staff. Damned monkey, I'll kill you! Hitorigami's hatred had reached its peak. When the great sage saw this, he hurriedly took off on his cloud in search of his next target. We can't go on like this. The Tiango Hell King frowned. He was the one who'd arrived late to help. However, after observing the situation for 10 minutes, he spoke up. Indeed, we won't be able to hold on much longer. The Black Tortoise Elder couldn't help but frown. If Maple City really can't hold on, then let's give up. Staying here won't do us any good. What's more, our warriors have used up a lot of energy. We need to retreat and think things over. Seconded. 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 Under such simple circumstances, the peak experts of the beast region came to a consensus. Su Lu'er was one of them. She really didn't want to retreat, but given the current situation, she had no choice. Retreat. The people of the three realms began to transmit to each other. When the warriors on the front lines received the message, they too began to retreat. The great sage, still using his staff to attack, froze. He hadn't participated in this discussion. Big bro, let's retreat, transmitted Yuan Hong. The great sage scratched his face, grinned and snorted, you guys retreat. IOL son, will play with them a bit longer. With that, the great sage swung his staff once more. This time, his target was Ingo of the 4 zombie progenitors. Yuan Hong knew his brother's strength well, so he wasn't worried. After transmitting, he hurried over to Su Lu'er's side. Although Lin Ru had already healed her, she was still incredibly weak. Yuan Hong didn't dare leave her side. They're retreating. We can't let them escape. Black Dragon and Jiangchen spoke up at practically the same time. Their thoughts were exactly the same. The great sage suddenly realized that Ingo and Hitorigami, who'd been chasing after him all this time, had suddenly stopped, and they were heading in the direction of Lu'er. Chapter 888. Yuan Hong's death. When he saw Su Lu'er plunge into danger, Yuan Hong's eyes instantly filled with terrifying veins of blood. Hanba, who'd been chasing after him, smiled cruelly. She reached out with her right hand without hesitation. Lu'er. In this extremely dangerous situation, her body's latent potential exploded forth. Whoosh. There was a flash of red light. In the space of a single breath, he'd arrived behind Su Lu'er, shielding her. Only now did Su Lu'er feel a sense of danger from behind. He abruptly turned his head and saw Yuan Hong holding the rod in front of his chest. The rod had already been broken into 2 and was held in each of his hands. Hanba's sharp claws sank deep into Hanba's chest after he broke his staff. Yuan Hong. Su Lu'er's shrill screams stopped the retreating crowd in their tracks. A monkey? Hanba hadn't expected Yuan Hong to appear here. After a brief moment of shock, she recalled how the great sage had toyed with her. Her head throbbed with pain. Since she couldn't catch that jumping monkey, she'd just vent her anger on his little brother. She let out a cold snort, and without any hesitation, her hand pierced through his chest. Humph. Yuan Hong couldn't help but frown. He didn't know if it was because of the pain or something else. Eyes bloodshot, he grabbed the 2 halves of his staff and stabbed them at Hanba's eyes. The zombie progenitors' bodies were truly unparalleled, but their eyes were as fragile as a mortal's. Without the slightest hesitation, Hanba yanked her hand back and leapt several steps, putting some distance between them. Blood spurted from Yuan Hong's pierced chest. He'd been standing behind Su Lu'er, shielding her from the wind and rain. But then, he fell to his knees. Yuan Hong. She screamed and ran to his side, hugging him tightly. The others also stood guard, guarding against Hanba. Su Lu'er didn't have much spiritual energy in her body to begin with, but she spared no effort in using her meager reserves to nourish his body. Don't waste your energy. Yuan Hong, who was in Su Lu'er's arms, grabbed her hand and shook his head. You actually didn't break free. Huh. I didn't suffer this injury for nothing. In the past, if Yuan Hong had tried to grab Su Lu'er's hand, she would have beaten him up long ago. But this time, not only did Su Lu'er not struggle free, she even forcefully grabbed his hand. She bit her lip and sobbed. Don't talk anymore. Tears streamed down his cheeks as Su Lu'er continued to pour spiritual energy into his body, then shouted at the people around her. Don't worry, don't worry. Pills, give me pills. The great sage, who had rushed over as soon as Yuan Hong had been injured, was currently holding his phone and sending messages non-stop. The person he was talking to was none other than old Lord Taishang of the Heavenly Court. Monkey King. Old man, hurry up and give me the life-prolonging medicine. Monkey King. Hurry up and send it to me, old Sunday Monkey King, hurry up. After urging old Lord Taishang, he ran to the red envelope group and sent a message. Monkey King, everyone, how much longer do you guys need? The great sage was truly anxious. His anxiety could be sensed from the messages he sent. The situation was no longer under his control. He urgently needed reinforcements. But before that, Monkey King, old man, pills. The second after he sent the message, old Lord Taishang's reply appeared on the screen. Old Lord Taishang, what pills do you want? Monkey King, healing pills. Hurry up and send them to me, old Sunday old Lord Taishang. Why? The stubborn old man had wanted to give him pills at first, but he felt like the great sage was ordering him around. This made him very unhappy. Monkey King, old lord, old son, beg you, please, please. From the wise stone monkey son Wukong to the great sage, heaven's equal, and then to the victorious fighting Buddha. In the past tens of thousands of years, he had never seen the great sage use a pleading tone to talk to someone. Old Lord Taishang froze, but he didn't hesitate. Ding. Spirit returning life prolonging pill. Old Lord Taishang, I didn't refine this pill. I found it in an ancient cave. I've tested its effects before. It should be stronger than any pill I've refined. Old Lord Taishang, I saw your message in the group. God of Thunder and the others are already on their way. Monkey King, thanks. Actually, Yuan Hong was a half-step immortal king, so his self-healing abilities were quite strong. However, with Su Lu Er's help, the hole Hanba had pierced through his chest had only worsened. Cough! A mouthful of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. As he coughed, another arrow of blood shot out of his pierced chest. Since his spiritual energy was depleted, Su Luer decided to give him some spiritual energy. Luer, forget it. As he tightly grasped Su Luer's hand, Yuan Hong's face suddenly glowed red, as if he had regained consciousness just before death. His pitch-black eyes shone brightly as he gazed at Su Luer's devastatingly beautiful face. Then, he reached out and caressed her face. You know, I fell in love with you the moment I laid eyes on you. However, I was still young and you were already an adult. I was afraid you'd reject me because of the age gap, so I buried my feelings deep in my heart. But I kept telling myself that you would definitely be mine in the future. Don't say any more. Let me continue. I'm afraid I won't have the chance again. Yuan Hong shook his head. Fortunately, cultivation knows no time. When we met for the second time, I was already an adult. I pursued you without any qualms. I let all the clans of the Beast region know that you, Su Luer, are the woman I, Yuan Hong, have taken a liking to. But I never would have guessed that I wouldn't marry you in the end. Don't say any more, don't say any more. Pure spiritual energy flowed endlessly into Yuan Hong's body. Tears streamed down her cheek. Hey, that's good too. We're still unmarried, so you should find someone who cares about you and marry him. Haha, you have to be like me, understand? Otherwise, they won't be good enough for you. Don't say any more, Yuan Hong. I'll only marry you. I'll only marry you. Is that so? Yuan Hong's face lit up, but his smile quickly dimmed. If only you'd said that to me a few hundred years ago. How wonderful! Whoosh! His arm fell limply to the ground. Su Luer reached out and grasped his hand tightly. Yuan Hong. Spiritual energy flowed endlessly into him, but Yuan Hong remained motionless, his eyes closed. Empress, General Yuan Hong has already. One of the people of the Beast region couldn't help but speak up. Don't waste your spiritual energy pointlessly. Your body is also. Shut up. Su Luer shouted angrily, but continued to pour spiritual energy into him. At that moment, the great sage, who just obtained a pill from old Lord Taishang with great difficulty, ran over. Third brother, there's hope, there's hope. But all he saw was Yuan Hong, whose eyes were already closed, and Su Luer, who was still clutching his hand, tears streaming down her face. Thud. The pill that even old Lord Taishang felt his heart ache fell to the ground. Chapter 889. He was truly enraged. It was impossible to tell exactly when. This memory was so distant that even the great sage couldn't quite remember. He only vaguely remembered that when he'd emerged from the spirit stone, he'd felt boundless loneliness. He'd run into Yuan Hong and the others. "Why don't we become sworn brothers?" Yuan Hong had instigated this. Back then, he hadn't been as awe-inspiring as he was now. He looked young and immature, and hadn't even learned how to take human form. The other spirit monkeys mulled it over for a while, then nodded in agreement. They were all too lonely. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have a few brothers. At that time, the great sage had agreed to it as well. Cultivation had no concept of time. Their rankings were purely based on strength. The great sage was the strongest, so he became the eldest brother. The red-bone horse-ape became the second brother. Yuan Hong was actually the weakest of them all, but he spouted a bunch of twisted logic and made the six-eared macaque the youngest sister. Just like that, they became sworn brothers. At first, the great sage was a loner. He wasn't good with words. Although he hated loneliness, he longed for the peace it gave him. It was President Yuan Hong who was following behind him, chattering nonstop. Although it was really noisy, the great sage realized he didn't refuse. Gradually, as time passed, or rather, Yuan Hong's passion burned like fire. The great sage truly became a loner. "Big brother, look! I've transformed!" At some point, Yuan Hong had rushed over excitedly. He'd always displayed his carefree personality in front of everyone, but after transforming, he'd transformed into a tall, muscular man. Previously, the siblings had laughed and said that Yuan Honghua must be a funny person. Now it was far from what they'd imagined. "Why did you transform like this? It doesn't look like you." The great sage laughed and shook his head. Yuan Hong scratched his head like a little boy. "I think Lu of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan would like this. Big brother, do you think my chances of wooing her are high?" "Brat, you've actually taken a fancy to the head of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan? You've got my style," the great sage teased, then patted Yuan Hong on the shoulder. "It doesn't matter if your chances are high or not. There are no cowards on Mount Huagua. Go right now and let everyone in the Beast region know that you've taken that Nine-Tailed Fox clan woman. If anyone dares to chase after her, take a stick and beat him up. If you can't beat them, come back and look for your big brother. I, old son, will help you take revenge." "Will it work?" Yuan Hong asked worriedly. "What's wrong with that? It's definitely not a problem. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. I still have to go out. To see that big sister?" Yuan Hong covered his mouth and snickered. "Big brother, why didn't you use the trick you just mentioned on that big sister? You know nothing." After knocking Yuan Hong on the head, the great sage somersaulted and disappeared from Mount Huagua. Actually, the great sage didn't expect that Yuan Hong would actually do what he had said casually. The entire Beast region was in an uproar. Su Lure of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan had even attacked Mount Huagua. It was the three brothers who'd settled the matter. However, the great sage, who knew what Yuan Hong was thinking, spread the word that anyone who dared to touch his brother's woman would have to suffer a blow from his staff. The entire Beast region went silent. Even Su Lure of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan had no choice but to ignore them. "Big brother, I love you." Smack. The great sage, who was in the middle of teaching his monkeys how to use staffs, was suddenly kissed by Yuan Hong, his face flushed red. In front of all those monkeys, his face was covered in sparkling saliva. Scram! Bang! He kicked Yuan Hong to the side of a small mountain, creating a crater in the mountain. However, when Yuan Hong emerged from the crater, he still had a cheeky smile on his face. "This guy." The great sage smiled and shook his head. He didn't know why, but he felt happy for him. Perhaps this was the love an older brother had for his younger brother, even if they weren't blood brothers. "Bert." The great sage held a gourd of monkey wine in his hand. His face was as red as a monkey's butt, and he continuously hiccuped. He reached out to pour more wine into his mouth, but Yuan Hong snatched the gourd from his hand. Gulp, gulp. Give it to me. The great sage's eyes flashed with hostility as he reached out. Yuan Hong shrunk back and handed the gourd over. The gourd was already empty. You want to die? Where's my staff? Here it is. Yuan Hong flipped his hand and handed over the Rui Jingu Bang. He'd picked it up on the way here. You dare give it to me? Aren't you afraid I'll beat you to death with my staff? Roared the great sage, his face red. If you're happy, big bro, then go ahead and beat me. Yuan Hong didn't smile at all. His expression was sincere. He waved the staff around, then put it down. You bastard. Bang. Yuan Hong sat paralyzed on the ground. He looked around for a while, then stealthily approached. Did Big Sis leave? She left. She said she'd wait for me in the skies, but when I went there, only then did I realize that the skies she spoke of weren't ours. The great sage's expression was somewhat desolate. At some point, a gourd of wine had appeared in Yuan Hong's hand. Drink some. Without any hesitation, the great sage poured wine into his mouth. Yuan Hong didn't stop him. He simply sat down beside him. Back then, their relationship was the best, and it was still the same now. You could say that Yuan Hong had accompanied the great sage his entire life, but now, Su Luer, he'd saved her. But the great sage didn't blame her. He knew how important she was to Yuan Hong. Just like her. If she were in danger, he'd throw caution to the wind to save her, even if it cost him his life. Ha! He laughed self-deprecatingly. For some reason, the sky suddenly filled with dark clouds. Boundless rain poured down from the sky, washing over his body. With a flip of his hand, the Jingu Bang appeared. Su Luer was still hugging Yuan Hong's head and crying. The surrounding beast region experts stood nearby, their expressions somewhat sorrowful. And this boundless rain. Was she crying for him? The two most important people in his life had both left him. Perhaps even the heavens sensed his sorrow, which was why they'd sent this torrential rain without warning. Ha! He sighed and laughed softly, then spun the Jingu Bang a few times in his hand. Then, he took a step forward. Boom! With him as the center, a violent wave of energy surged outward. The gale of spiritual energy sent the boulders around him flying and shattering them. His body began to glow with golden light, and his human body gradually devolved into that of a monkey. Golden fur and golden eyes. He swung the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand, creating a gust of wind. Then, he pointed the Jingu Bang forward with his arm. Chapter 890. The Furious Great Sage Pitter-Patter. It was as if a hole had opened in the sky. Rain poured down in torrents. The rumbling thunder was hidden in the middle of the clouds, and the ink-like clouds made the atmosphere abnormally oppressive. Beneath the inky clouds. Is that the great sage sun? The people of the beast region watched in astonishment. Even the weakest among them was a peak sky immortal expert. But in the face of the great sage's power, they felt as if they'd be sent flying. The demons and the zombie progenitors noticed the great sage's abnormality. The great sage was like a descending deity. His entire body flashed with golden light as he stared coldly at Hanba. It's you, isn't it? His voice was almost cold, devoid of any emotion. He waved the staff in his hand, sending out terrifying gusts of wind. No, it wasn't just gusts of wind. As he waved the Rui Jingu Bang, waves of energy radiated outwards. Boom, boom, boom. Ancient trees snapped in half and boulders exploded. All of this was caused by the great sage's casual swings of the Rui Jingu Bang. Monkey. Standing nearby, Hanba's heart trembled. She didn't know why, but when the great sage acted like this, she felt a faint sense of fear. You're the one who injured my third brother, aren't you? Chirp. Hanba suddenly let out a loud and clear cry. Not long after, the group of blood zombies rushed over as if they had received an order. Tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, of zombies swarmed the great sage. "Bite him to death!" Hanba roared angrily. She was very nervous. When she saw the great sage's golden eyes, the fear in her heart seemed to be nourished, and it kept climbing. She retreated without pause. Only when she stood behind the tens of thousands of zombies did she feel somewhat at ease. The zombies unhesitatingly lunged at the great sage. Bathed in golden light, the great sage suddenly stopped waving his staff. "I'm asking you a question. Why are you running? Do you want me to come over and ask you myself?" This wasn't the first time the great sage had used the word "I." He didn't know why, but after using it for so long, he'd suddenly abandoned it. Was it anger? Perhaps. His golden eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised the stick in his hand that had stopped dancing. "Then I'll go to your side and say hello." One step, another step. The great sage walked forward slowly, dragging the Rui Jingu bang across the ground, leaving a long trench in its wake. What caught people's attention was that this ravine was also emitting a golden light. No, they were golden flames. The golden flames burned fiercely, and even the heavy rain could not extinguish them. When the blood zombies were only a few meters away from the great sage, they stopped moving forward slowly. Their faces suddenly twisted with malevolence. They swarmed forward. The great sage looked at the zombies indifferently. Before long, he was surrounded by them. "Great sage!" The hearts of the Beast Region's experts trembled. In the distance, Hanba's lips curled into a smile. A fox assuming the tiger's might. These blood zombies were extremely bloodthirsty. Right now, they weren't any weaker than man-eating ant. The monkey actually dared to let them pounce on him. Humph, it won't be long before he turns into a pile of white bones. Go ahead and eat. Skin him alive and chew his bones to pieces. Hidarigami groaned in her heart as she stared at the great sage, who was surrounded by blood zombies. Eat. Just as Hanba was grumbling in her heart, the blood zombie wrapped around the great sage suddenly emitted a beam of golden light. The great sage of golden light. Boom. The great sage's zombies were all sent flying by the golden light, but he remained standing in place, completely unharmed. His body bathed in golden light. Whoosh, whoosh. His expression was cold as he swung his staff. As it struck the air, it whistled through the air. Crash. Blood drip. The group of zombies that were still in the air were all cut into pieces by the shadow of the staff. Minced meat and severed corpses fell from the sky to the ground. The rain of blood mixed with the boundless rain of the void, pouring down in buckets. Fresh blood splattered the great sage's face and hair. Not long after, the blood on his body was washed away by the majestic rain. His hair was still pure gold, and his face was still emotionless. Hanba froze, then her eyes flashed with a sinister light. Bite him to death. Zombies had no emotions, no feelings, and no fear. They wouldn't cower in fear just because they'd seen one of their companions dismembered. Under their master's orders, they flew at the great sage like moths to a flame. Bang, bang, bang. The great sage casually waved the staff in his hand. Before the staff could even touch the zombies, they fell to the ground in pieces. How nice! Inexplicably, the great sage suddenly looked up at the boundless rain. This rain was really nice. No matter how much blood he was stained with, the rain would wash it away. It seems the heavens are on my side. How nice! He muttered to himself, then retracted his gaze. He didn't advance with slow footsteps. Instead, he used his gaze and spiritual awareness to lock onto Hanba. Whoosh! He was like a beam of light. The onlookers only saw a beam of golden light, then saw all the zombies in front of the great sage soar into the air. The sky was filled with afterimages of his staff. The airborne zombies were all dismembered. Fresh blood soaked the ground, soaking the great sage. However, after being washed away by the torrential rain, the great sage quickly returned to pure gold. Rainwater mixed with blood flowed to the distant crowd's feet. This Is this really the great sage? The experts of the beast region couldn't help but stare in astonishment. They looked down at the blood at their feet, then at the great sage amidst the horde of zombies. Although the great sage was stubborn and mischievous, he wasn't the kind of person to kill. It was true that he'd killed monsters with his staff, but it was too much. Don't worry, I'll be right in front of you. After dismembering thousands of zombies, the great sage stopped and gazed off into the distance. Bits of zombie flesh fell on his body, but he acted as if he didn't see them at all. He smiled calmly, then flashed with golden light. Boom! It swept through. A beam of golden light sliced through all the zombies in front of him. They were the last of the death servants standing in Hanba's way. Tens of thousands of zombies were annihilated in the blink of an eye. You! Hanba's eyes brimmed with terror. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of zombies had all died. She kept retreating backward. Hanba's lips turned a little pale. The great sage looked at her coldly, then raised the Rui Jingu Bang high into the air. The rainwater washed away all the blood on it, then he brandished it once more, his right hand blocking it. He pointed. A beam of golden light exploded in the Hitorigami's path of retreat. Sensing the attack, the Hitorigami stopped as well. Then she heard. Chapter 891. He had to go this way. Where have you brought me to this time? When the struggle for supremacy ended, Guzichin had taken Yizichin away. They were currently surrounded by a sea of chaos. Aside from a few meteorites and craters, there was nothing else to be seen. Hurry up and give me the seal. Let me go back to Maple City. I brought you here for your own good. Guzichin glanced at Yizichin coldly. The seal's power is too strong. If you use it in the three realms, it might trigger a heavenly phenomenon. Have you forgotten that the higher-ups are watching you? Yizichin froze, then arched his brows. Thank you for taking care of me. Can you give me the seal now? Or rather, I don't want it. Just hurry up and let me go, all right? Are you in such a hurry to get back? What nonsense are you spouting? Yizichin frowned at Guzichin. I don't even know what's going on over there. Yizichin smiled calmly. Guzichin, who was facing Yizichin, suddenly laughed. But even if you go right now, it won't help matters. With that, Guzichin pointed at the sky. A ripple spread in the air, and not long after, a waterfall-like curtain appeared in front of them. Shockingly, the image showed the great sage in a berserk state, waving his staff to end the zombie. This is the great sage? Yizichin frowned as he stared at the screen. This was far too different from the great sage he knew. If it weren't for the Rui Jingu Bang, he really wouldn't have recognized him. The spiritual stone monkey. Guzichin pursed his lips and smiled. The spiritual stone monkey was born from spirit stones of heaven and earth. It absorbed the fortune of heaven and earth, the essence of the sun and moon. Heaven and earth naturally feared such a heaven-defying creature. As soon as it was born, it placed a seal inside its body. Now, it's obvious that the first seal has been broken. What seal? You don't need to know that, replied Guzichin without hesitation. Then he arched his brows. Right now, I want you to pay attention to what's going on. The image beneath the curtain instantly transformed into a holographic projection, which enveloped the hundreds of thousands of troops of the demon race and zombie race. Although the three realms had quite a number of troops, they appeared rather weak in the face of these two colossi. Did you see that? I saw it. The more he learned, the more solemn Yizichin's heart became. He knit his brows, then took in everything that was happening. All the more reason for you to let me go back. Don't waste my time here. Hurry up and send me away. You want to go back? Guzichin couldn't understand why Yizichin still wanted to go back, even after everything had gone this far. Can't you see the situation clearly? What can you do even if you go back now? You can't change the situation here at all. You might even make it worse. Of course I know, said Yizichin. Then why are you still asking to go back? Guzichin furrowed his brows. You know you're going to die, but you still want to go back? Is there something wrong with your head? Then do I have to stay here? Can I solve the problem by staying here? Yi Zichen questioned. Pa Gu Zichen slapped his head in exasperation, then arched his brows. Why did we come here? To give you the seal of the Lord of the Three Realms. This seal is a spiritual treasure born of heaven and earth. If you refine it and go back, you might even have a chance to reverse the situation. Do you understand? Speechless. The spiritual stone monkey can hold out for a while longer. I suggest you take advantage of this opportunity. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Zichen suddenly spoke up. Have you experienced it before? After a brief moment of surprise, Gu Zichen nodded. You walked this path back then, didn't you? Gu Zichen nodded again. And the result? The result. Gu Zichen's lips quivered, but he didn't say anything. When he saw his expression, Yi Zichen understood. It was tragic, wasn't it? That's already the best possible outcome. I refuse. Yi Zichen ignored Gu Zichen's explanation. This was the path Gu Zichen had walked. It was destined to fail. If he didn't want to end up like Gu Zichen, he refused. Let me go back now. I don't need the Lord of the Three Realms seal anymore. You don't waste any more time. There was no room for negotiation. Gu Zichen glanced at him, then sighed helplessly. All right, then I'll take you back. Yi Zichen hadn't expected Gu Zichen to refuse. Although he was surprised, this was good news for him. Then let's go back. Which way do you want to go? Without hesitation, Gu Zichen pointed in a certain direction. Yi Zichen nodded, then walked in that direction. Bang! Before he'd taken more than a few steps, Yi Zichen felt a knife hand strike his neck. His vision blurred. He turned around and saw that Gu Zichen's hand had a handprint on it. I'm sorry, but you have to walk this path. The handprint slammed into Yi Zichen's forehead. The instant it sank in, Yi Zichen lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. If you refuse this path, then it's all over. Gu Zichen laid Yi Zichen flat on the ground, then looked at the scene before him. It's up to you now. The rain continued to pour. The great sage stood proudly in the pouring rain with the Jingu Bang in hand. His golden eyes burned with a tangible flame as he stared at Hanba in front of him. Answer me. Is it you? Fear. Under the gaze of those golden eyes, it was as if all of Hanba's defenses had crumbled. Terror filled her heart. She wanted to run, but the great sage had already locked onto her. Even if she wanted to run, she couldn't. But this feeling. Die. Ho Qing, one of the zombie progenitors, had appeared behind the great sage at some point. His right hand transformed into a sharp claw and swiped at the great sage's back. Bang! He suddenly spun around and smashed his golden staff viciously into Ho Qing's arm. Crack! Despite his powerful physique, the great sage's staff broke Ho Qing's arm. The great sage's staff instantly lengthened, and he slammed Ho Qing into a distant cliff. This has nothing to do with you. Scram! I'll deal with you later. With that, he turned to look at Hanba. Just like before, he stared at her calmly. Extreme fear gave birth to either destruction or madness. Hanba obviously wasn't the type to choose self-destruction. She chose madness. Die, monkey! Ha! The great sage laughed coldly, then swung his staff without hesitation. Chapter 892. In the illusory formation, are you all right? Just as the great sage was about to finish off Hanba with his staff, a gentle voice suddenly called out to him. At the same time, the world before him was no longer raining. Instead, it was filled with white mist. Are you all right? The great sage felt his heart palpitate when he heard that soft chant from afar. Was it her? For tens of thousands of years, the person who'd haunted his dreams. Was it really her? Dong. He gripped the Rui Jingu Bang tightly and turned to look ahead. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down, growing hoarse. Is it you? It's me. The gentle voice reached the great sage's ears. After receiving confirmation, the great sage sprinted forward with all his might. A figure appeared within the clouds, but no matter how hard the great sage tried to run, he couldn't even see the person's face. Bang! The great sage tossed the Rui Jingu Bang to the ground. He rarely revealed his true feelings, but his eyes were moist as he looked at the figure in front of him. If it really is you, can you come out and see me? I can't. The gentle voice rang out once more. The great sage's heart was in turmoil, but this rejection left him dazed and dejected. I can't. A sorrowful smile tugged at his lips. He sighed and gazed at the figure in the distance. Are you still blaming me? For a long while, the person in front of him said nothing. The great sage sat down dejectedly on the ground and shook his head. Don't worry. That's right, you must be blaming me. If I were you, I wouldn't forgive me either. 70,000 years. It's been a whole 70,000 years. I've always lived in self-blame. I thought that after becoming a Buddha, I could sever our ties, but now I realize I was wrong. The great sage sat on the ground and muttered to himself. However, the experts of the beast region were all dumbfounded. Even Hanba was dumbfounded. What was going on? When Hanba made her move, the great sage's staff was already right in front of her head. However, he suddenly pulled it back. Then, he turned and ran like mad. He tossed the Rui Jingu Bang away, sat paralyzed on the ground, and muttered incessantly. After a brief moment of shock, the drought demon's eyes lit up. Monkey, go and die! Just as she was about to attack, Jiangchen forcibly dragged her out of the way. You're courting death. Illusion Array. An elder of the Fire Phoenix clan spoke. Their Fire Phoenix clan knew about Chiman Duanjia. With just a glance, he was certain that someone had set up an illusory formation. Illusory array? The other experts of the beast region furrowed their brows. How could the great sage have fallen into an illusory formation? Furthermore, we've been here this entire time, yet we've never seen anyone set up a spiritual formation. This is where the other party's brilliance lies. To be able to set up a formation without leaving any trace, he must at least be at the level of a formation master. Then can you break the formation? We can't let the great sage stay inside forever. That's putting him in danger, said someone from the beast region. The Fire Phoenix tribe elder sighed and shook his head. To be able to set it up without leaving a trace is already at the level of a grandmaster. Furthermore, this spirit array seems to be of a very high grade. Just now I searched for a long time but still couldn't find the core of the spirit array. To be able to set it up to this level, it must at least be at the level of a grandmaster. This old man is not talented and cannot break the spirit array. Then, however, there's no need to worry about the great sage's safety. A illusory formation has no real offensive power. It only draws out the obsession of those who enter, causing them to sink into oblivion. Furthermore, illusory formations generally attack indiscriminately. Anyone who enters will fall for it. That's why the great sage is safe for now. The only thing we need to worry about is whether or not the great sage will be able to walk out. The elder from the Fire Phoenix tribe let out a long sigh after his words sounded. I heard that back then, the great sage. Before he could finish his sentence, he shut his mouth. This was the great sage's most obscure past. If he spread it, he'd be committing a grave sin. He licked his lips, then changed the subject. Let's hurry and find the person who set up the formation. Once we find him, the spirit array will naturally be solved. Brother Su, you did it, didn't you? Up in the sky, Black Dragon knit his brows and looked at the great sage, who sat on the ground, muttering in his sleep. Just now, I noticed that Jiangchen was by your side the entire time. When he left, he kept bowing to you. Between the two of you... It's nothing, said Suiyun. He asked me to save Hanba's life, so we came to an agreement to work together. I didn't think it was a loss. Besides, that monkey really was a threat to us, so I agreed and casually set up a mirage formation. Black Dragon, you won't blame me, right? asked Suyun from his chair. How could I? It's best if we can work together. Otherwise, I'm worried that we'll be attacked from both sides, said Black Dragon with a smile. The Black Dragon replied with a smile. After that, he turned to look at the monkey below. Then now we can't make a move yet. Wait for the monkey in the formation to commit suicide, then we'll go deal with the remaining soldiers. 70,000 years. For the past 70,000 years, I've always wanted to go find you, but... The great sage continued to sit on the ground and let out a long sigh. The person standing in the distance also spoke at this time. Then why didn't you go find me? You've regretted it for 70,000 years, but didn't I bitterly guard you for 70,000 years? I'm sorry. An apologetic smile spread across the great sage's face. He sighed in frustration and shook his head. Actually, I shouldn't have let you go back then. I tried to get you to stay, but it's all in the past. I thought I'd never see you again in this lifetime. I never thought you'd actually come. Even though I know you won't forgive me, I still want to say, forgive me, all right? The great sage's tone was indescribably gentle. He looked forward expectantly, waiting for an answer. No. All he got was a cold refusal. Now you know you were wrong. Now you know I should forgive you. But what did you do back then? Since you think it's my fault, then you should continue to admit it. Now that you've suddenly admitted your mistake, isn't that saying that our relationship is so fragile that we don't even have the most basic trust, right? The great sage's lips trembled, but he didn't say anything for a long time. After a long silence, I'm sorry. Sorry? That's all you can say. The person's tone was no longer gentle. How did I ask for your trust back then? But look at you back then. Sorry? Do you really think a simple apology can solve everything? Then what do you want me to do? Do you want me to die? Fine. The person's reply was as cold as ever. Death is indeed a solution. If you're free, then so am I. Chapter 893. Breaking the formation. Why are you blocking my way? Why don't you take advantage of this opportunity to kill that monkey? Jiangchen stopped Hanba and furrowed her brows in confusion. Whether it was the terror the great sage had instilled in her, or how he'd provoked her earlier, or how he'd left several bumps on her head, they'd both filled her with an unerasable hatred for him. Grandmaster Su set up a mirage formation. If you want to do the same, you can go over. Jiangchen wasn't a kind-hearted person. He'd only saved Hanba because she possessed a vicious beast soul. Earlier, when the beast region had been preparing to retreat, Jiangchen had ordered her to kill the beast region's empress. In the entire beast region, the empress was the only one who posed even the slightest threat to them. He'd wanted to take advantage of her weakened state and eradicate her once and for all. But Hanba had failed and even angered the monkey. If it weren't for her mistake, how could so many problems have arisen? They'd lost tens of thousands of subordinates, and Ho Ching had even lost an arm for her sake. Yet now she dared yell at him. Jiangchen snorted coldly, then stopped trying to stop Hanba. Instead, he pushed her forward. Go. A mirage formation. When she heard this, Hanba didn't dare move. Although zombies were strong but not intelligent, she knew how powerful mirage formations were. It was the kind of deep memories that were dug out without any warning. She didn't want to. Hanba forced a smile and stopped walking. He took a few steps back and immediately opened his mouth to speak. How did you find the demons? I made an agreement with them, replied Jiangchen, his gaze as cold as ever. The demons are now our allies. Our first priority is to get rid of the people of the three realms. Once we're done with them, we'll deal with the demons. But Guli, don't worry about him, snorted Jiangchen. Besides, even if he were here, he would have done the same thing. Hanba nodded slightly. Her gaze lingered on the monkey sitting on the ground, muttering incessantly. Then she looked at the beast region cultivators in the distance. Then should we go deal with them now? No, we don't know the range of this mirage formation. The demons haven't moved yet, so let's not. Although we're allies, I'm still suspicious of them. Jiangchen shook his head calmly. Hanba spoke again. What if they take this opportunity to escape? Why would they run? These people are all righteous. There's no way they would abandon that monkey. From Jiangchen's expression, it seemed he'd already figured out who they were. Besides, even if they got away, they'd only be hanging on by a thread. They can escape Maple City, but can they escape the Three Realms? As Jiangchen had said, the ambitious cultivators of the Beast region and the Immortal region didn't flee. Instead, they used their spiritual energy to protect the Great Sage. The surrounding almighty beings all locked their gazes on the demons and zombies who could pose a threat to them. They were afraid that they would launch a surprise attack while the Great Sage was unprepared. Hey, look at what the Great Sage is doing! At that moment, someone from the Beast region called out. Everyone looked over and saw the Great Sage sitting on the ground muttering to himself. For some reason, he picked up the Rui Jingu Bang. He slowly walked forward and placed the rod across his neck without hesitation. Great Sage! Shouted the people of the Beast region anxiously. Watching from afar, Black Dragon arched his brows in surprise. What is he doing? Unbeknownst to them, Su Yun's expression was incomparably dark. He frowned at the Great Sage, who held the staff against his neck. His expression was grave. Black Dragon raised his eyebrows when he saw this. Brother Su! HM? Su Yun snapped out of his daze and retracted his expression. What is it? Brother Su's face didn't look too good just now. Oh, I was just thinking about what Jiangchen might do to us if he cooperated with us. I was thinking too much, so I got a little carried away, Su Yun replied with a smile. I see. Black Dragon nodded in understanding and said, Brother Su, you really put in a lot of effort for me, the Demon Sovereign. If I could, I really want to borrow another 100 years of lifespan from the heavens for Brother Su. Su Yun only heard half of Black Dragon's pleasantries before automatically blocking them out. He waved his hand, signaling him to stop talking, and smiled. I appreciate your kind intentions. Right, did you want to say something to me just now? Brother Su, look at that monkey. Now that they were talking business, Black Dragon didn't say anything else. He pointed at the Great Sage and said, He's been talking in his sleep ever since he entered the formation. Now he's suddenly holding the staff against his neck. Is he going to commit suicide? What on earth happened in the formation to make him act like this? Everyone has their most cherished memories, but they're unwilling to touch them. The formation I set up just happened to dig out those memories. That monkey is clearly immersed in his memories and can't pull himself out. As for what he experienced, perhaps only he knows. Bang. He held the Rui Jingu Bang across his neck. Although it wasn't a blade, if the Great Sage wanted to, he could kill himself right here and now. This is the result you wanted, right? The Great Sage stared at the illusory figure in front of him, a bitter smile on his face. Yes, this is the result I wanted. What, you don't dare? Her tone became playful, but for some reason, her voice wasn't so ethereal anymore. It seemed especially real. Then can you come out and see me one last time? I can't. His answer was resolute. Gripping the Jingu Bang, the Great Sage's lips twitched, then he let out a long sigh. Thud. The Rui Jingu Bang was smashed into the ground by him. This illusion really is very realistic. That's what the Great Sage said as he slammed the staff into the ground. He picked up the staff and walked around a few times. Strange images appeared in the white mist. These were all memories he'd hidden deep within his heart for a very long time. For tens of thousands of years, he hadn't dared pry or touch them. He never would have imagined that the memories he'd carefully protected for so long would suddenly appear before him like this. He'd thought he'd go crazy, but to think that he was actually so calm. He'd put on an act and catered to everything in the illusion, all so he could see her again. But in the end, he didn't get his wish. He finally realized that an illusion was just an illusion. It wasn't real at all. Since that was the case, what was there to linger about? Suddenly, the great sage tightened his grip on the Rui Jingu Bang, then leaped into the air and smashed it viciously at the illusory figure. Chapter 894. A two-layered formation. He's moving. The great sage is moving. When the beast region experts saw that the great sage wasn't holding his staff to his neck. Instead, he grabbed it and smashed it down, their faces lit up with delight. I knew it. The great sage has fiery eyes of truth. He can see through all things in the world. How could he have fallen for a mere illusory formation? I know, right? We were worried for nothing. As expected of the great sage, the instant the great sage made his move, everyone watching him came to life. They couldn't stop sighing in admiration or teasing the people around them. Their moods were carefree. The demons and zombies, on the other hand, weren't in such a good mood. He actually broke through the illusory formation? Hanba frowned. Jiangchen frowned deeply as well. Over on the demon side, Black Dragon asked the same question. Su Yun said, Great Sage Sun has fiery eyes of truth. Great Sage Sun has the eyes of fire and gold, so illusion arrays don't pose much of a threat to him. Moreover, I was the one who had casually set up this illusory formation. I did it to save Hanba, not to kill him. It's reasonable that he would break the formation. For some reason, Su Yun seemed indescribably relaxed as he spoke. He narrowed his eyes, then turned to Black Dragon and said, Prepare to fight. Prepare to defend against the enemy. I don't know how that monkey became so powerful before. Although the illusory formation didn't finish him off, you should understand that he's not as strong as he was before. Understood. Black Dragon nodded and left. Only then did Su Yun's lips curve into an almost imperceptible smile. Break for me. Bathed in golden light, the great sage swung his staff viciously at the distant illusory figure. It was true that he had fiery eyes of truth. Everyone else thought he'd use them to break through the formation. However, only he knew that he hadn't activated his fiery eyes of truth. The fiery eyes of truth could pierce through all obstacles. Once activated, the illusion would vanish like smoke. He'd hoped to see her again, so he'd deliberately sunk into the illusion. Alas, he didn't get his wish. I want to see you again. The great sage was still thinking about her as he soared into the sky. He viciously smashed his staff into the illusory figure. In his opinion, this shadow was the key to breaking the formation. Dong. The great sage was stunned. The moment he swung the rod, he was stunned. The feeling he got from the rod was that the person standing there wasn't an illusion at all, but a real person. Pooh. Blood mist filled the air. Eyes of fire and gold, activate. With a furious roar, the great sage's eyes shone with dazzling golden light. Who? A cool breeze blew past, and the fog that made people lose their minds was completely blown away. Bang. When he saw the person in front of him clearly, the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand fell to the ground with a thud. Monkey, are you all right? After the mist dissipated, a woman was standing there. She was wearing a purple dress and had a lavender flower in her hair. Her lips curled upwards as if she was smiling, but a trickle of blood flowed down from her forehead. Drip. It landed on the ground. How could it be you? How could it be you? The great sage yelled like he'd gone mad. Didn't you already go to the God realm? Didn't you say that you'd never come back? Why are you here? Why? I missed you. The woman standing there pursed her lips into a smile, and a hint of bitterness could be seen on her face. We've been apart for tens of thousands of years, but I've been thinking about you every single moment of my life. Coincidentally, my father was away recently, so I snuck down to see you. Impossible, impossible. If the person here really is you, why would you say something like that? Why didn't you come out to see me? I was afraid. I was afraid that if I saw you, I wouldn't be able to resist being with you forever. The woman's voice grew weak. The great sage clutched his head with both hands and paced back and forth like a madman. Then, his eyes bloodshot, he flashed in front of the woman and hugged her tightly. Blood flowed uncontrollably from the woman's forehead. The great sage frantically tried to heal her wound. "I didn't do it on purpose, I really didn't." The woman in the great sage's arms was extremely pale. She reached out and caressed the great sage's cheek, a blissful smile on her face. "When I left you, I really regretted it. But I didn't dare disobey my father's orders, and I was afraid that he'd take his anger out on you because of me. Over the past tens of thousands of years, I've fantasized countless times about the day you'd hug me again, just like now. Finally, my wish has come true. Why didn't I use the fiery eyes of truth earlier? Why did I have to use them so confidently?" The great sage's lips trembled as he muttered to himself. The woman in his arms smiled gently. "It's fine, isn't this great? Just like that, I'm free. There's clearly someone I love, but we can't be together forever. Isn't this torture for both of us? I don't want to. Really, I really want to be with you forever. I really want to know you. Have you ever thought about me?" The hand caressing the great sage's cheek fell to the ground, and the woman in his arms dissolved into motes of light, vanishing from his embrace. The great sage frantically tried to grab at the motes of light, desperately using all of his wealth and fame to reunite the woman's dissipating primordial spirit. But it was all in vain. No. The great sage knelt on the ground and howled to the heavens. At that moment, a violet morning glory fell to the ground. His gaze fell upon the morning glory. This flower. He'd personally put it on her head all those years ago. He picked it up and carefully placed it in his arms. Then he looked at the Rui Jingu Bang. He'd used it to slay demons and exterminate evil. He'd used it to punish the good. But now he'd used it to kill the woman he loved the most. "What use do I have for this metal staff?" Bang! He stomped the Jingu Bang hard into the ground. Then, the great sage's mind replayed what had just happened. He'd killed her with his own hands. Ah! Kneeling on the ground, the great sage howled hysterically. In the blink of an eye, he'd transformed into a 10-meter-tall ape. The golden color on his body had also completely dissipated, and his body was emitting a heart-palpitating blood aura. Roar! With a deafening roar, the great sage's eyes flashed with red light. Then his gaze fell upon the people around him. There was no sense of reason in his eyes, only bloodlust. Seeing this, everyone's hearts trembled. Off in the distance, Su Yun furrowed his brows and gazed into the sky. Chapter 895. The people of the higher realms, what on earth is going on? The great sage. The people of the beast region stared in astonishment at the great sage, who'd transformed into a giant ape. He'd clearly used his fiery eyes of truth to destroy the formation. How did he end up like this? He'd lost all sense of reason, only the bloodthirst of a wild beast. Didn't we already destroy the formation? Why is the great sage like this? Everyone looked at the elder of the Phoenix clan. None of their clans were proficient in Chimanduanjia, so the elder's words carried the most weight. When the crowd looked over, they discovered that the Fire Phoenix clan's elder's face was filled with a gloomy light. A double-layered formation. I never would have guessed the enemy had such an expert. A double-layered formation. The onlookers didn't understand. A double-layered formation is a formation that, after the original formation is destroyed, places a double-layered formation on top of the original one. That way, the person breaking the formation will subconsciously believe that after breaking the formation, he'll once again fall into a mirage. The great sage really did destroy the original formation, but he fell into the trap of the double-layered formation. The elder furrowed his brows. The double illusion formation is to dig out the inner world of the person inside the formation on an even deeper level. The great sage has already fallen deep into the formation and has lost all sense of reason. I suggest we give up on him. Give up? The onlookers froze. From their expressions, it was clear that they didn't want to give up. If we don't give up, what else can we do? The elder's face was filled with helplessness. A formation grandmaster isn't someone I can handle. Now that the enemy has laid down a double-layered formation, he must be at the pinnacle of formation grandmasters. Besides, it's impossible to destroy the double-layered formation. Only the person trapped inside can break it on his own. Otherwise, no one can help him. The great sage has already lost all sense of reason. We're also his targets. If we don't give up on him, are we just going to stay here and wait for death? The others fell silent. Then, someone spoke up. That's all we can do for now. Let's retreat. If the great sage really is unlucky, when the time comes, we'll just have to avenge him. Retreat. The people of the Beast region and the outskirts of the Immortal region all agreed. Luo Wei and the others also arrived in front of Su Luo. She was still hugging Yuan Hong's body, but she was no longer crying bitterly. Instead, she was staring at the person in her arms with lifeless eyes, even though the person in her arms was already ice-cold. Water Empress, let's retreat. I'm not leaving. Su Luo looked as if she'd lost her soul. She hugged Yuan Hong tightly, as if she'd been embedded in the ground. I'm not leaving. Empress. I said I'm not leaving. Boom. The great sage in his giant ape form had already begun his attack. His first target was the zombies. But even though they were far away, the Beast region cultivators couldn't help but feel their eyelids twitch. Empress, let's hurry up and leave. The great sage has already gone berserk. If we stay here, we might all die. The people around her repeatedly tried to comfort her, but she remained expressionless. Then die. I will never leave Yuan Hong. I will never. Brother Su, what's going on? Black Dragon, who'd gone off to instruct his subordinates to prepare for battle, returned just in time to see the great sage in his giant ape form. Like a human reaper, he stomped relentlessly on the zombies, who looked like mere ants to him. Boom. With each stomp, he crushed several zombies into meat paste. A double-layered formation, said Su Yun, frowning. Did you set it up, Brother Su? No. Su Yun shook his head, then gazed intently into the distance. There's an expert. When he sensed Su Yun's gaze, Black Dragon followed his gaze. At the same time, he spread out his spiritual awareness and probed into the distance. There's no one. Even if there were, you might not be able to find them. Su Yun mercilessly lashed out at Black Dragon. It's true that you have the strength of a supreme. In the entire lower 3 realms, you're absolutely invincible. But there's always someone stronger. You should know that. But this place. Yes, this isn't the God realm. Su Yun nodded. But someone capable of setting up a double-layered formation has to be at least a grandmaster of formations. What's more, a double-layered formation requires an extremely high level of understanding of formations. You should know that he set up a double-layered formation based on my own formation. That makes the difficulty of setting up a double-layered formation exponentially higher. Given their abilities, it'd be easy for them to make it so that a mere supreme like you can't find them. Then, what do you think we should do, Brother Su? The awe-inspiring Black Dragon's words caused Su Yun to lose all confidence. Bide our time, said Su Yun. Bide our time. Black Dragon arched his brows. Since they set up a double-layered formation based on my own, they naturally have to deal with that monkey. I heard that monkey is rather arrogant. It's understandable that he's offended a few enemies. But in the end, he's not one of us. What he thinks isn't something we can pry into. To be on the safe side, the way I see it, we should bide our time. Su Yun's face was filled with solemnity. Soon after, he opened his mouth again. Besides, the monkey's current target is the zombies. Isn't it a good thing for us to weaken them? Wouldn't it be better if we bide our time and reap the spoils of war? Brother Su, you're absolutely right. Black Dragon felt that Su Yun's words made sense. Perhaps it was more accurate to say that he subconsciously believed everything Su Yun said was correct. Nodding his head, he ordered the Devil Race's people not to move recklessly. Su Yun let out a long, obscure sigh of relief. Then he gazed into the sky, as if trying to find the person who'd set up the formation. "That monkey must be the one she can't forget," said Black Dragon. Sure enough, there were people in the sky. Standing in the middle of the clouds was a youth dressed in brocade robes. His face was somewhat sinister, and the rims of his eyes were dark. He sneered at the rampaging great sage. "Most likely," said another youth beside him. Another young man beside the young man said, "Before little sister returned to the clan, she seemed to have only interacted with him in the lower realms." Yao. Your clan's upbringing is really strict. You're actually involved with Yao? That's not for you to say, snorted the youth. Enough. If it weren't for little sister, I wouldn't have come down with you. Now that the monkey has lost his mind, you can imagine what will happen. Let's hurry up and leave. There's an expert here. You mean the Grandmaster of Formations? Laughed the sinister youth. Becoming a Grandmaster in a place like this is indeed rare, but he's already at the end of his rope. What threat does he pose? Chapter 896. The attacking giant. In his giant ape form, the great sage went berserk. He was like an attacking giant, trampling and tearing apart the ant-like zombies. The zombie progenitors had no choice but to evade his attacks and flee in panic. Where could he be? Su Yun's gaze was fixed on the sky. Suddenly, he stopped and stared at the clouds, as if he wanted to pierce through them. Oh! The brocaded young man standing in the clouds arched his eyebrows. He smiled playfully, then looked at Su Yun. He found us. Whoosh! At that moment, a ray of light shot towards them. The shadowy young man frowned. You dare attack? With that, he scowled and prepared to attack. With a flip of his hand, he dispelled Su Yun's attack, then frowned. You're right. Don't cause trouble. I've already broken the clan's rules by coming here. Your clan's rules really are troublesome, snorted the young man. The young man in luxurious clothes snorted, and then he revealed a sneer and said, Forget it, I came down this time for that monkey, so I won't care about that fellow. That's for the best. The young man beside him frowned and nodded. At that moment, the jade pendant at his waist flashed. Little sister. The young man placed the pendant in his hand. Third brother, where are you? I'm drinking with a few friends. What's wrong? Replied the young man, his expression cold. Drinking? The voice in the pendant was clearly suspicious. Let me see who you're drinking with. I don't think that's appropriate. They've all drunk too much and their clothes are a bit messy. You're not married yet, so it's not appropriate for you to see this. Besides, you'll be getting engaged in a few days. How about this? I'll return to the clan. If there's anything you want to say, we can talk about it when we get back. Slap. The young man put the pendant back on his waist, then looked at the young man in the luxurious robes. Little sister is starting to suspect me. Don't waste any more time. Hurry back. No problem. The young man shrugged. The young man turned and left. Then his gaze fell on the berserk great sage. He flicked his finger. The great sage's right leg was pierced through, and a mist of blood sprayed out. Bang! He fell to his knees. When the surrounding blood zombies saw this, they pounced on him without any hesitation, especially under the stimulation of the blood energy. When he saw the great sage surrounded by blood zombies, the sinister youth's lips curled into a disdainful smile. Humph! Trying to steal my woman? You're not worthy. Let's go. The young man in front furrowed his brows. The well-dressed young man sneered at the great sage, then chased after him. With a flash of light, the two disappeared. Not long after they left, Lin Ru appeared at their previous location. Damn it! Among the demons, Su Yun's expression was grim. Sure enough, he'd found the right place. It really was deep within the clouds. However, there was nothing he could do against them. The great sage's leg was severely injured, and the black dragon was still by his side. If he made a move now, he would definitely be discovered. Good luck to you, Su Yun murmured, then turned his head back and closed his eyes in concentration. Right now, he had to conserve his strength. Before long, he might need it. Amidst the blood zombies, the sudden injury forced him to kneel on the ground. The pain in his leg caused him to howl incessantly. Wave after wave of zombies swarmed him. In just a few breaths of time, zombies crawled all over him. Ha! The zombies grinned, drool dripping from their mouths. Then, their gazes changed. Bite. Roar! The berserk great sage let out a furious roar. His eyes were bloodshot as he rose to his feet and sent the zombies flying. The zombies that broke free from his body still had some of the great sage's hair or blood on their teeth. Roar! With another roar, the great sage focused all his hatred on the ant-like zombies. An opportunity. Jiangchen couldn't help but arch his brows when he saw the great sage turn around and chase after the zombies. The zombie progenitors gathered by his side, then heard Jiangchen's voice. This monkey has gone berserk and has lost all rationality. Everything he does is based on wild beast instincts. After going berserk, his strength has multiplied, but judging from how the zombies tore at him just now, it's clear that his defenses haven't changed much. Furthermore, he's injured his leg for some reason. This is an opportunity for us. Big brother, what do you think we should do? Asked the emaciated Ho Qing. What else can we do? Just kill him, said the bare-chested Ingo, his expression murderous. Then should we ally with the demons? Asked Hanba. She knew about the agreement between Jiangchen and the demons. Ally with them? Jiangchen snorted coldly. Right now, they can't wait for that monkey to destroy us, yet you want them to help us? This offensive and defensive alliance is all talk, but if it really concerns our own interests, then it's useless. Then what else can we do? We can just attack. Ingo wasn't in the mood to chat with them. Without the slightest hesitation, he charged at the great sage. Ingo! Jiangchen roared, but Ho Qing waved him off. Don't mind him. That's just how he is. Let him go. Although he's not very bright, he has a keen sense of smell when it comes to fighting. There won't be any problems. Tell me your plan. Jiangchen's expression froze. Actually, I don't have a plan. We haven't had enough time, and we still haven't figured out the monkey's characteristics after going berserk. But we can't just let things go on like this. Let's fight while we watch. Alright. The other zombie progenitors attacked one after the other. By now, Ingo was already behind the great sage. Big guy, eat my fist. Bang. His fist slammed into the great sage's calf. Ingo's full force attack would have shattered even a Sky Immortal expert, but it had no effect on the great sage at all. The great sage continued to hunt down the zombies. Ingo frowned. Don't underestimate me. Bang. He punched again. This time, however, his punch attracted the great sage's attention. He watched as the great sage slowly turned his head, eyes as large as his head, calmly glanced at him. Come on! Ingo's eyes flashed with excitement. He was itching to fight, but then he saw the great sage crouch down. Humph! Ingo's nostrils flared, almost sending him flying. The great sage reached out and flicked his finger. Bang! Ingo, who stood before the great sage, flew helplessly into the sky. Meanwhile, Jiangchen and the others behind him stopped. Chapter 897. Chapter 897. The great sage's weakness. Jiangchen reached out and blocked Hanba and Ho Qing's path, then stared intently at Sun Wukong. Coincidentally, Sun Wukong was looking back at them. His scarlet eyes glinted with a terrifying light. Jiangchen and the others couldn't help but gulp. Fortunately, the great sage only glanced at them a few more times before turning around and ignoring them. Instead, he directed his hatred towards the blood zombies. Phew! Jiangchen let out a long sigh of relief. Hanba and Ho Qing did the same. Hey, you're still beasts that take up a third of my soul. Do you really have to be so scared? Jiangchen couldn't help but frown. But you're still our main body. Aren't you panicking too? Ho Qing rolled his eyes. I was just a little tired from running, said Jiangchen without batting an eyelid. Ho Qing and Hanba rolled their eyes at him and ignored him. Bang, bang, bang. At that moment, Ingo, who'd crashed into the mountain, ran over, dragging his heavy feet. They thought this thick-skinned guy would say something that would make them speechless, but to their surprise, this guy's pretty strong. There was no trace of his usual color on his face. He collected himself and stared solemnly at the enormous creature that blotted out the sky. Just now, I caught him off guard and punched him twice. I'm quite confident in my strength. Even those humans, peak sky immortals, probably couldn't take a punch from me. Even if the beast race has astonishing defenses, an early-stage sky immortal beast like him definitely couldn't take a punch from me. But when I hit him just now, he didn't even react. He ignored me like I tickled him. And his strength. To tell the truth, I've always been proud of my strength, but when I faced him, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. No one expected Ingo to be the one analyzing the situation. Jiangchen and the others glanced at each other, shocked and solemn. If Ingo cared so much, just how strong was the berserk monkey? But the blood zombies really did hurt him. I'm absolutely right about that. Jiangchen watched as the blood zombie bit through the monkey's back. Although he didn't understand why the monkey hadn't been turned into a zombie, he couldn't hide his pained howls. Only now did he feel that the monkey's defense didn't change at all after going berserk. But just now, Ingo had personally tested his defense. Could it be that Ingo's attack happened to be where his defense is stronger? Ho Qing, who could be considered the brains of the zombies, said, "If we treat him like a normal beast, the defenses of his legs and arms must be stronger than the other parts of his body. Next are his back, abdomen, face, and eyes. Let's not care about anything else, no matter what race he is, even if he has gone berserk. His eyes are still his weakest spot." Ho Qing is right. Hidorigami nodded. Jiangchen nodded. Even for zombies, the eyes were their weakest point. Let's do as Ho Qing said and attack his eyes. As long as we can injure his eyes, we'll have won half the battle. Especially the heavy rain now, it's especially beneficial for us. Alright. Bang. The berserk great sage stomped again. His furry feet had already crushed countless blood zombies. He was surrounded by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The pungent stench of blood permeated the air. The smell of blood stimulated his bestial instincts, and it also stimulated the group of blood zombies that did not fear death. Splat. He grabbed a few blood zombies and crushed them. Fresh blood flowed down his furry hands. Just as he tossed the crushed zombies to the ground, he saw Ingo, bare-chested, attack him from the side. HM? The berserk great sage stopped and stared at Ingo, as if he'd just slapped the ant flying. Bang. His fist slammed into the great sage's cheek, but Ingo didn't attack again. Instead, he landed on the ground, wiggled his butt, and taunted. "Hey monkey, come after me." Ho Qing's analysis was correct. The great sage's hairless face really wasn't as strong as his legs. Ingo's all-out punch hurt. Then he saw his opponent provoke him. This ant actually dared to provoke him. Without hesitation, the great sage chased after him. So he really came. When he saw the great sage's provocation succeed, Ingo glanced at the enormous creature chasing after him and fled. Roar! The berserk great sage chased after him. Although his movements were slow due to his current size, he was still very tall. With every step he took, he had to catch up to Ingo. Even though he ran at full speed, he could still feel the great sage closing in on him. Ingo's heart raced. He could already feel the tremors on his back. It wouldn't be long before the monkey caught up to him. He gazed at the ancient tree in front of him. Soon, as long as he reached it, he'd have a chance to turn the tables. Almost there, almost there. Attack. Just as Ingo reached the ancient tree, he roared. Swoosh. Hanba, Jiangchen, and Ho Qing, who'd been hiding in the tree for a long time, emerged at the same time. They only had one goal: to blind the great sage's eyes. The enraged great sage saw the three ants, but he didn't care about them at all. All he wanted to do was squash the ant that made him feel pain. Stab. The division of labor was clear. Ho Qing landed on the great sage's neck. His hand instantly transformed into a sharp claw that stabbed viciously into the great sage's neck. Roar! The great sage roared as he chased after Ho Qing, then reached out to grab him. Go blind. At that moment, Jiangchen took advantage of the opportunity to stab the great sage's left eye with a sharp blade. Roar! The pain in his eye was unbearable. The great sage leapt to his feet and roared. He reached out and sent Jiangchen flying. Hanba, who'd been about to stab the great sage's right eye, was also mercilessly sent flying. Roar! He roared incessantly, blood dripping from his eye. Then, roar! His fur instantly turned blood-red. His nostrils flared up in ragged breath. At the same time, he shook his neck and tossed Ho Qing to the ground. Humph! Hanba, Ho Qing, and Jiangchen couldn't help but grunt. But to their despair, their vision darkened. Then they saw the great sage lift his foot high into the air. Humph! You came just in time. At that moment, a chuckle resounded through the air. Before long, they saw Gu Li smile faintly. He looked at the great sage, who was only filled with animalistic instincts. This is my subordinate. How could a beast like you possibly touch him? He punched out.